Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
If I was a ninja, I could escape from them. The boy continued his uncoordinated runaway from the orange glow, from the torches in the hands of the crowd, from the hurtful things coming out of their mouths. Then the boy's eyes suddenly opened. If I become a girl, I could do a lot of things, and they would have to respect me. But if I want to do all that, I have to stay away from current. The boy had already stopped crying, trying to remember how the ninjas ran. They were leaning forward and throwing their arms back to balance themselves. The blonde guy leaned forward from his upright run and lifted the arms to avoid falling, adopting an aerodynamic posture. Surprisingly, he started running faster. Now he could move forward with more strength, as long as he kept his balance. Then they have that cool thing. What was it like? I think her name was Katra. I have to concentrate. I need to find her. The blonde-haired young man closed his eyes, expelling the things that were shouting at him, and began to concentrate, looking for something in him, while still being verbally chased for who he was. Nothing, I can't find anything. Wait, there's something there, it is warm. The boy took him out of his consciousness and threw him into the darkness of the night. Suddenly, a blue glow burst out of him. Katra's shockwave slowed down the crowd, but then they became enraged. The young blonde man was slightly thrown into the air, and a small crater appeared in his place. The boy landed, turned around, and saw the crater. He looked at his dirty hands and saw a blue glow emanating from them. The warm feeling, the cot is everywhere now, I can feel it running through my body. I wonder what happens when I put it on my feet. The blonde concentrated the mysterious force on the soles of his root sandals. He started running through the crowd, and, suddenly, he launched himself forward with a wave of Katra shooting out from behind. Lifting land. The blonde turned into a blurry spot and disappeared. Full speed of the crowd's view towards the outskirts of the giant village. Yahoo shouted. For the fun that his life at full speed produced for him. He jumped up and flew over the buildings. This is amazing. If I keep this up, I'll be a ninja in no time. Hell, I'm so young, I'm going to become Okage. He landed in a small complex of buildings. There was no light coming from the windows. This place is completely desolate. I'm gonna stay here for a while. He sneaked into a house and looked for a room. He crept stealthily through the kitchen, the dining room, and went up a staircase that, for some reason, squeaked a lot. He ended up in a small room with a bed for his size and a bunch of toys and practice weapons for ninjas. She had a lot of orange stuff, her favorite color. She put Katra on her feet in silence, jumped up quickly to bed and lay down. She covered herself with the sheets. It's going to be difficult. I don't have those gadgets to test the things I need to do. Wait a minute, they were chasing me. That could be my mission, to get what I need to survive, and get back to my apartment without anyone noticing. I'll have to sneak off to listen to the ninja masters learn how to make those really cool jutsus. Like they can transform into other people, replace themselves with things, or even create a clone. The blonde guy turned around and closed his eyes. Uzumaki Naruto. The next Okage then fell asleep in the house that was not in use. The next day, Naruto woke up alone in the lonely compound. She put on her sandals and went out to the back of the house. Surrounded by walls that connected to the house, there was a garden with several open spaces. And now what do I do? He sat cross-legged and closed his eyes, remembering all the times he had seen ninjas. He opened his eyes and looked at the wall. Somehow, they stick to things that are upside down on their side. Naruto walked towards the wall. He lifted one leg and supported it. He forced his cot on the sole of his foot. To his surprise, his foot stuck to the wall. The boy smiled and put his other foot on the wall. But the boy fell headlong to the soft ground with a grunt. Alas, there is not enough Katra. The blonde sat up and thought about his last attempt. I think I should start with the floor. Naruto lay down on the floor with his feet resting on the wall. Katra put a lot of pressure on herself. But the wall creaked under his feet. The blonde sat up and saw a small hole in the wall. Too much, I suppose. He approached a solid piece of the wall. He decided to put half of Katra on his feet. She shrank, and her feet glowed blue. He took a step up the wall. He stood his ground, which made him glow with happiness. Slowly, he climbed another step up the wall and remained steadfast. He made a mental note of how much Katra he should put on his feet and started running along the walls cheering. Meanwhile, at the Okage Tower, Sarutobi was furiously staring at the stacks of papers in front of him. I was hoping that if I looked at them long enough, they would just disappear and no one would ask questions. But that's what dreaming is supposed to do, and after an hour of staring, he gave up and made a move to finish something before another thought came to his mind. I wonder what Naruto is doing right now. He glanced around his lonely office and closed the blinds. He reached into one of the cupboards and pulled out a crystal ball. She concentrated part of her chakra on the ball and found the spiky blonde sleeping in a clearing surrounded by flowers. Glad to hear you are safe. I'm sorry about how this ended, but I wish Minato would get his wish. Sighing, the Sandaime put the crystal ball back in its place. Then he got up and opened the blinds while looking at the huge pile of papers. He sat down again and stared at the stacks of papers. Just once, please. Suddenly, the pile got a little smaller. The old man opened his eyes wide and began to do the rest of the work in fear. Back with Naruto, Naruto was lying with his legs crossed, his hands behind his head, and his eyes closed. It was noon, he thought, with the sun directly above him. I have to become a ninja. I won't make it to age 10 if I don't start now. The boy got up, picked up some of his kots at his feet, and jumped up. She continued her long strides through the wind, feeling him caress her hair. I will be a great ninja. He continued his strides until he landed in an all too familiar neighborhood. It was full of bars. Suddenly, all eyes were on him. I should have moved on. But he felt something around them, something consuming them, all their hatred, their ace. His desire to kill him. But the boy did not back down. He took his first shaky step and started walking. I will not be afraid of these people. His blue eyes were full of determination. Somehow, he managed to make his way through the streets with his hands in his pockets. Disappointed. His face clearly said, I'm not afraid of you, and you can't do anything to change it. He continued his death march through the streets. Everyone's disgusted looks met her eyes of pure determination and willpower. They didn't confront him or yell at him. He found the building he was going to. He shrank back, putting Moskatra on his feet, and began to walk along the wall. By a window, he turned to face the ground. Naruto leaned back, leaning his back against the wall. He slid down until he was sitting on his heels. He put more Katra to his ears and began to listen. Today, class, we will review the Eng, said a ninja teacher. Naruto took out a pen and a notebook and started writing about the lesson. He took a quick look inside and saw the teacher clasping his hands. Naruto, as fast as he could, drew the sign with his hand in his notebook. You have to think about the image in your head, then you start molding your chakra in the stomach. Then you let him out. So it's called chakra. The master disappeared in a cloud of smoke and the figure of the Okage appeared. Let's see, everyone try it. Naruto watched as a lot of people tried to become the Okage, but most of them failed. Naruto jumped up and ran towards his new home. He was a little blurry spot to the villagers he was passing by, who ignored him like he was one of the ninja and Nezuka dogs. Naruto jumped the shops and houses and found the abandoned compound. He sneaked into the house and locked the door. He went to the kitchen and found a lot of food. He pulled out instant ramen and started cooking it. Instead of waiting the antagonistic 3 minutes for him to cool down, he pulled out his notes blog. He reviewed his rather well-done drawing of the hand signal and the instructions. He put his hands together as in the picture. He felt that his chakra was a little more solid, not as fluid as usual, but he called it the shaping chakra. He took a picture of the window and concentrated. He pushed aside everything that surrounded him and concentrated on the image. He compressed his chakra and released it. A puff of smoke came out of him and he vanished. Naruto looked at his hands. They were old and wrinkled. He stumbled for a swim from his new height. Naruto found it and looked at himself in the mirror. It was identical to the Hokage. He smiled and shouted Yada. He was still focused on maintaining the state of his chakra before releasing it. Another puff of smoke emanated from him. Then she looked at herself in the mirror again and found herself as usual. Naruto came out again, noticing the huge bathtub in the bathroom. He began to eat his ramen quietly in the lonely house. When he finished, he began to explore it. It was quite dusty, so no one must have lived there for a while. With the light still out, he was able to make things out more easily. He went up the stairs, now silent. The blonde with bristly hair entered the room where he slept the night before and looked at the contents. There are a lot of things here, a lot of weapons made of wood and weight. Naruto looked at a small sign. Welcome home, Naruto. It was written in kanji. The plate had the same amount of dust as anywhere else in the enclosure. Naruto slowly approached the board, gathered chakra on his feet, and approached the wooden board. It was written in red paint, something that only a calligrapher could do. I don't know anyone else named Naruto. So this must be my family's house. He jumped off the wall and crashed to the ground as he was running out the door. Naruto ran through the doors until he found a huge bed in the middle. At that moment, the blonde was crying as he carefully crossed the room and sat down on the bed. He looked around until he found the bedside table on the other side of the bed. Naruto crawled across the bed and picked up a motorbike. It featured a red-haired woman holding what appeared to be her pregnant belly. Mom! Mom! Naruto watched the figure, absorbing as much as he could. Then he noticed that an arm was wrapped around the woman's shoulder. She followed the appendix to a man who attracted her with a smile that Naruto thought he had recorded. The man had spiky blonde hair, longer than Naruto's, and was wearing Hounen clothes, like the other one in the photo. Naruto's eyes popped open at the sight of the photo. It can't be. Yandame. Yandame is my father. Naruto grabbed the picture of his parents and ran out of the house, locking the door. He injected so much chakra into his legs that it shot out like a blue flash that looked like a comet in the night. His mind crossed a very random but beneficial memory. I remember a kunoichi was yelling at a guy with white hair and dark circles. I was yelling at him for being a pervert, but the guy was reluctant to apologize. Then she said she was going to castrate him, and he, frightened, apologized effusively. Within seconds, Naruto found himself at the entrance of the Hokage Tower. Still holding the image in his hand, Naruto accumulated the right amount of chakra and taped it to the wall next to the staircase. He pulled her closer and started running along the wall to avoid going up the stairs. She ran past the receptionist without even realizing she was there before a gust of wind hit her. He found the door of the cage opening and accumulated chakra in his open hand, which turned into a fist. He found the door and rushed headlong towards it. His fist was burning like a flame with the blue essence. The door never stood a chance. Naruto knocked the door off the hinges, and the door flew inches from the Hokage's face before exploding out the window. Naruto stormed in with the angriest face he could put on. Dude! If I had any idea what neutering means, I would do it right here, right now. Moments later, an ambo appeared and tried to stop the boy. But Naruto saw it and concentrated more chakra in his fist. Naruto turned to try to backhand the ambo. Ambulo blocked with his forearm, but it didn't do much good. The physical attack was stopped, but the chakra was not. It shot out of the back of the blonde man's hand like a shotgun and slammed him into the wall. He fell unconscious moments later. To say that Sarutobi was shocked was an understatement. Naruto barged in here yelling that he was going to castrate me, and then eliminated an Ambu member. What you have to say must be very urgent. What's up, Naruto? The blonde man's anger subsided and turned into deep sadness. Tears were almost coming out of his eyes when Saruto lived that Naruto was holding a motorcycle. Why is that? Why didn't you tell me about my parents? Sarutobi was extremely surprised, Did anyone tell him about his parents? No, that wouldn't explain the picture. Sit down, please, he said calmly. Naruto slid onto the nearby couch, watching the picture that drew their faces. I'm really sorry I didn't tell you, but it was to protect you. Your father had a lot of enemies, and if they had found out that he had a son, they would have persecuted you mercilessly. Naruto just nodded, still looking at the photo. They loved me. The Hokage smiled. We're making progress, that's good. Naruto, your father and mother would have given their lives for you. When you were born, your mother couldn't stop hugging you. We had to give him anesthesia to get you to let go. Naruto smiled at the thought of his mother beating the nurses while still holding him. Well, man, I've never held a grudge against you, and I'm not planning on doing it now, but you owe me a very big one. Sarutobi just sighed and nodded. What do you want? I want to live at my parents' house, Sarutobi nodded. There's nothing wrong with that. And I want you to enroll me in the academy. This surprised Sarutobi. Registration? Why start so early? I realized that if I don't learn a lot of ninja stuff, I won't make it to the age of 10. He saluted and lowered his head. True, these damn villagers do not know the difference between a cup and the water in it, but this will not be so easy. I have a little problem with that. If you start now, you probably won't be able to keep up with children of the right age. Didn't I just eliminate the guy in the mask, or do I have to beat the crap out of a bunch of those guys? At this, Sarutobi chuckled. I'll probably get 1 or 2 more. Mom, what can you do now? Naruto smiled and left the photo. He walked to the center of the room and concentrated. I would do something flashy, but not too much. He concentrated and his whole body was enveloped in a chakra flame. Then Naruto let him calm down. He turned to the wall and walked towards it. Without stopping, he began to climb up the wall to the ceiling. He made a sign with his hand, and his whole body was covered by a smoke screen. When the smoke cleared, there was an exact replica of the Hokage standing on the roof, smiling. It's pretty good, besides, your chakra must be intense if you can release it and knock someone unconscious. The 4-year-old jumped to the ground and undid the eng. In front of him was a smiling Hokage. When do you want to start? The Hokage asked, lighting his pipe. Then, the little blonde jumped up the walls and burst into cheers. This made the old man laugh, but also cry in his mind that I have done. Naruto landed in the same place before saying, I want to start in 2 days. I need to settle in my house. The Hokage nodded. I'll stop by tomorrow. Your dad probably left some stuff behind that you'll need my help to unlock. The blonde boy nodded with the smile still present. Thanks, old man, he said. Naruto waved and jumped out of the broken window, leaving a small trace of chakra behind him. Then Sarutobi looked around. There was a small crater in the wall, an unconscious Ambu member, a door was missing, and there was a huge hole in one of the windows. Let the paperwork come, this will entertain me for a while. Naruto woke up in the bed he slept in the night before, holding his parents' picture as close as possible. He got dressed and went downstairs. The house was as lonely as ever. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. He looked out the window and saw the Hokage. Good morning, Naruto, he said smiling. Good morning, old man. Naruto opened the door a little further and let him in. This is a very nice place. Your parents were very humble. Of whether they were ever arrogant about who they were or what they had. Naruto smiled at his father's sermon. All right, follow me, said the Hokage. The Hokage walked through the simple house as if it were the palm of his hand until he found a door with a piece of paper. In the middle of the paper was the blood stamp box. Okay, Naruto, this is a blood seal, Sarutobi said pointing to the piece of paper. Blood seal. What is that? Naruto asked with eyes like plates. People use it so that they or their relatives can open it. To open it, you just have to smear a little of your blood on the seal and it will open. How do I get the blood? Naruto asked, still wide-eyed, thinking of stamps that only family members can use. You just have to bite your thumb, and a little blood will come out. Naruto nodded and started biting his thumb. Suddenly, her skin broke, and she felt a small surge of pain. Alas! Exclaimed the boy, shaking his hand. Oh, to be young, the Okage said with a slight chuckle. Naruto smeared his blood on the door seal. The patterns and kanji glowed a deep red before disappearing. Then, the door opened. Naruto slowly slid it out before entering the room. There were scrolls on top of cupboards that held them, and that went around the walls. The two looked around before finding an orange scroll on a little table. Naruto came over and picked him up. On it was the name of Naruto, printed in black. Holding the scroll, there was another blood seal. With the wound still open, Naruto smeared more blood on the seal. The seal disappeared and the scroll was easily opened. There's nothing here, the blonde boy said, looking at the blonde scroll. Suddenly, red lines began to form that turned into more kanji, as if they were writing a letter. Naruto started reading. Hi son, in case you haven't noticed yet, I'm the Yondaime, your father. This scroll answers your questions and mine, just as I would. My first question is, how do the villagers treat you, well or badly? You can mark your answer below. First, Naruto put the scroll down on the table and started reading it. In silence, the Okage left the house, leaving the child alone. Then a box with the kanji for good next to it appeared, while another with bad next to it. Naruto opened the wound a little, shrinking in pain. This is gonna take a while. He put the blood together at the wrong mark. Then more kanji started appearing at the top of the scroll. Damn, those villagers are still arrogant idiots. I guess I have to tell you why they hate you. Well, the Kirubino Yoko attacked you the day you were born. I had only one option: to talk to your mother to do it. After many beatings and crying, he finally agreed. When you were born, she knocked most of the nurses around her unconscious while holding you down. I had to put him under anesthesia so he wouldn't strangle you. Naruto laughed again at the recurring thought of the red-haired woman hitting several nurses. Well, I took you with me to the battlefield. I knew I had a lot of enemies, and I didn't think you could defeat them all. So I decided to seal the QB in you. Naruto looked at the scroll in amazement. How could I have the QB inside me? I never wanted to hurt anyone, and I did my best with the stamp. If it worked, you probably haven't met the QB, unless you were in a life or death situation. Don't worry if you ever meet him, stand firm, and don't show fear. I made the seal so that, in case of emergency, you can invoke his chakra, and this one will direct you directly to your chakra spirals. How old are you? A large box appeared written in red. Naruto opened the wound again. It didn't hurt so much this time. He wrote 4 in the box and disappeared. 4. Well, your mom is probably giving me a beating right now in heaven for not having asked for it sooner. Remember that we always love you. Well, and do you have any ninja skills right now? Naruto opened the wound and began to write. I started using chakra a few days ago. I was being chased by a mob, and I thought about what it would be like if I was a ninja. Then I thought about how they run, and I started running faster. I found my chakra and put it on my feet. I sped up a lot and found our house. I feel really bad about you and mom's death, but this scroll is fine. Anyway, when I found a picture of you two together, I ran out of the house and went straight to Sandaime. I ran up the stairs, put chakra in my fist, and punched through the door. The door flew out the window right next to the old man's face. I said I'd castrate him if I knew what it meant. Then, a guy with a white mask and black clothes came out and tried to grab me. But I put chakra in the fist and tried to hit it. He blocked it, but the chakra overflowed and knocked him unconscious. The blonde boy was waiting for an answer while the blood seeped out. I'm so proud. A red image of a roughly drawn Yondaime had tears in his eyes and a raised fist. A bubble appeared next to the figure. My son is 4 years old, and he is beating Ambu. The image faded and more kanji appeared. By the way, have you seen a man with hair white that looked like that? Under the kanji was a picture of the perverted man. Yes, that's him. The blonde quickly scored. His name is Jiraiya, and he was my teacher. If the Okage knows about us, he'll probably ask Jiraiya to help you with more advanced things. In a few years. Will you join the academy? Naruto was smiling happily at his conversation with his father's scroll. I'm joining the academy tomorrow. I'm a little nervous because everyone will be older than me. Don't get nervous, just get strong enough to beat them. By the way, I don't know what you look like. I don't know if you look more like your mother or me. A red painting appeared, and Naruto began to draw his face, from his spiky blonde hair, to the smile that was his trademark. The image leaked onto the scroll, and her father's words began to appear. Heh, you look exactly like me with the mustache marks. Well, since you start the academy tomorrow, I should tell you that the scroll case by the door contains very easy-to-learn jutsus that I got you when you were growing up, but they should be working by now. Oh, and since the villagers weren't very nice to you when you ticked that box, several stamps were activated around the house. They create a barrier that will not allow anyone to enter the enclosure without good intentions. Well, if you need to talk to me, open the scroll again. Remember that your mom and I are sad that it turned out this way, but we love you always. The writing on the scroll faded, prompting Naruto to close it. The blonde turned to the case his father had pointed out to him and approached. He took one of the scrolls and read the title. Requirements of the Genie Exam. Naruto took the scroll to the kitchen and placed it on the counter. He went to the cupboard and pulled out more instant ramen. It was still noon, so I had plenty of time to practice. He cooked the ramen, and while he was waiting, Naruto opened the scroll and started reading. In Konoha, a genin must be able to use 3 very basic but effective jutsus: Enge, Kawerimi, and Bunsen. Enge changes the external appearance of the person. The Kawerimi allows the person to replace himself with an inanimate object to dodge attacks. The Bunsen creates a clone of the user. But in the past, teachers approved users who could not perform Bunsen, but another type of Bunsen. Bunsen is used for ninjas with low chakra levels, but with increased chakra control. If a user has high chakra levels, in turn, he has a low chakra control. If the reader has high chakra levels, it is recommended that he learns another type of Bunsen. Naruto was eating his instant ramen while reading the scroll. Are there other types of Bunsen? I could probably beat some ninja if I put a lot of chakra in my feet, so I guess I have a lot of chakra, so it would take a lot of practice for me to try a Bunsen. Or I could probably look for another kind of Bunsen in the scroll room. Naruto continued reading the scroll about the Enge to understand the basics and found that it doesn't require much chakra control. Just concentration and focus. Kawerimi was not so easy. You had to attach a small line of chakra to the object, then attract it to yourself, and put it back. The chakra was compressed and expanded like the Enge to create the smoke. Naruto grabbed one of the stools next to him and pulled it out. He placed it in one of the clearings. He applied chakra to his finger and began to extend it between himself and the object. Naruto had discovered that the chakra is most easily handled by making a basic hand signal. Naruto, while still connected to the stool to work on his chakra control, easily compressed and expanded it, and got out a cloud of smoke. He was dragged to where the stool was, and it took its place. Yata shouted. While running, he mastered 2 of the 3 jutsus to pass the Genie exams. Naruto finally calmed down and dragged the stool back to his house. He returned to the scroll room, leaving the stool in the kitchen. He returned to the case his father had made for him and looked for more scrolls. He found one about something called taijutsu and continued looking for Bunsen scrolls. There were none in the section I was looking at. He began to scroll through the scroll, he observing many elementary jutsus. I'll check them out later. He was already a long way from the beginner's scrolls when he found one. Kajebansen. Naruto asked, leading him to the chair, placed it on the nearby table, and opened it. Hey Naruto, I thought this scroll would be perfect for you, me and your mom. We mastered this jutsu easily because we both had high chakra levels. The jutsu is simple form this manual seal. Underneath the writing was a rather well-drawn picture of 2 crossed hands with the middle index fingers poised. And you almost doubled your chakra. The more you double it, the more clones you get. By bending it as many times as you want, expand the jutsu. A few puffs of smoke will appear around you. In those puffs of smoke will be the Kaguya. Naruto took the Taijutsu and Kaguya scrolls and left by a bench. He formed the hand seals and began to fold his chakra. He folded it about 3 times and let it expand. 3 puffs of smoke surrounded Naruto. When the smoke cleared, 3 Narutos were left, very pale and unconscious, with swirls in the eyes. Naruto ran to the scroll to see what he had done wrong. I guess the clones were very pale and unconscious, right? Yeah, your mom and I did the same thing. They have to be very defined folds, you can't just turn them over. Try it now. Naruto walked towards the same place where the clones disappeared. He formed the same manual seal. He was completely focused now. If I want to become a strong ninja, I have to concentrate completely. Everything was blocked. His mind was completely blank, just focused on folding the chakra. He folded it hundreds of times, all very sharp. Kagebun without no jutsu. He expanded the chakra. The whole place was filled with Narutos. Everyone shouted Yata. In unison, raising his fist in the air with the same smile. Everyone scattered and returned with the 4-year-old. He walked back to the scroll and read past the point he reached. I'm proud of where you are. You probably created your first Kagebun without until now. Whether you have created 1 or 100, we will always be proud of you. As a gift in your room, there is a blood stamp in the closet. When activated, clothes that will fit you will come out. It looks a lot like my battle clothes, so you'll probably scare the villagers. Make sure you are prepared for whatever is thrown at you. I recommend you to read the Taijutsu scroll in the beginners section. It will help you to learn or create your own form of Taijutsu. Naruto happily closed the scroll and grabbed the Taijutsu scroll that was next to him. He opened it and started reading. Taijutsu is a basic martial art for the common shinobi. It can range from learning to emit chakra at the last second, like the soft fist style, or extreme physical training to hit your bones. Naruto continued with the scroll by learning the basic movements of all forms of Taijutsu. Then, he explained how to create his own form of Taijutsu. Many forms of Taijutsu were created to counteract other gems. If you create your own style, you will have to learn it in combat. Naruto remembered the moment he said he was going to castrate the Hokage. Those masked guys are supposed to be very tough, and they have to protect the old man. If I can knock one of them out with my chakra, that's what I have to do. I have to create a style through that. Naruto took the scroll, accumulated a large amount of chakra on his feet, and shot out. I've been wearing these same clothes for the last few weeks. I should get the clothes the scroll told me to when I'm strong enough. This should help me become strong enough to protect me to your villagers. Naruto was just a blue comet coming from the chakra that came out of his feet in the middle of the day. Naruto continued along the rooftops until he reached the ninja training camp. He found 3 poles next to a monument. Someone with white hair was there looking at him. He wasn't the guy with marks under his face. This guy had a mask that covered his mouth and nose. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and started working on his new style. The scroll said that if you want to add chakra to your attacks, it's good if your attacks are rotating. Naruto placed the scroll on one of the posts and stood in the middle of the clearing. It also said that you should have smaller attacks and end the combo with a final move. Naruto concentrated chakra in his fists, but only in the front. The chakra began to rotate around the front of the fist. Then, his feet began to glow with the blue essence, doing the same. Naruto started with a step with his right leg, leading his right fist and releasing chakra. Then, Naruto turned, sliding his left leg over the right one, and with a punch with his left hand. He launched another chakra discharge towards the invisible enemy. Still taking advantage of the momentum, Naruto jumped into the air with his leg spinning, releasing another intense chakra discharge. He landed in front of the invisible enemy with both hands on his chest. He took a step forward, extending both arms and releasing chakra. A huge torrent of chakra shot out, much larger than the one he used against the Zanbu. Unbeknownst to Naruto, the masked ninja turned his gaze towards the blonde. He looks a lot like him. Could it be your son? No, that was only 4 years ago. He kept watching the blonde guy expelling chakra from his limbs. No one has spiky blonde hair yet, apart from Hinoichi, but not of that shade. So that's him. He is 4 years old, and he is already learning a style of taijutsu, or at least I had never heard of it. Naruto continued his combos, releasing more chakra with screams after each blow. I have to get strong. I want the villagers to respect me, so I must become the best of the best. Naruto jumped and landed near a tree. He charged the entire chakra of his body and expelled it. The tree was uprooted and flew a few meters back, knocked down. After suddenly realizing it, he started running around screaming that he had a new style of taijutsu. The white-haired man gaped at the spectacle. He just uprooted a tree. The shock wave does not impact at any initial point, but engulfs the object and throws it into the air. He has talent, but if he's like his mother, he won't like being called a genius. The man was sitting on one of the posts next to the one containing the scroll. He took it and began to read it. From this he created his own style, a scroll for beginners. Naruto turned to read more about how to create new shapes when he saw the masked ninja. Huh. Hey, what are you doing? The ninja looked up and saw the blonde boy watching him. Oh, I was just looking at this scroll to see what that style you were using was called a moment ago. Good luck finding it there. I'm creating my own date ballo. This guy seems fine. He hasn't called me a demon yet, so he must have some respect for me. Kakashi was a little surprised by the blonde's response. Did you do it yourself? How did you get it? This will be interesting. The ninja thought. Well, I activated my chakra a few days ago, and for personal reasons, I got very angry with the Okage. I punched through the door, flew past the old man, and out the window. That would explain the hole in the window. When I met the Okage this morning, then, a guy in a mask and black clothes came out and tried to grab me. I put chakra in my fist and turned to hit him. He blocked the blow, but the chakra shot out of my fist and slammed it into the wall. This kid never ceases to amaze me. He's 4 years old, and he's already eliminated one Ambu member. Were you able to remove a member from Ambu? You're pretty tough. What do you plan to call the style? The blonde adopted a thoughtful pose. How about the chakra pulse? Sounds good to me. Are you planning to join the academy? In fact, I'm joining the academy tomorrow. I have been learning in Ji, Kawarimi and Kajeben Sin to protect myself from the villagers and to be able to pass the exam. He is forced to work to survive in his own village. This guy is already ready to become a genius. I hope I can teach him. I swear, Sensei, I will protect him no matter what. I should tell Itachi about this guy if I see him. Well, good luck at the academy. Who knows, maybe I'll be your sensei when you pass. My name is Itachi Kakashi. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The Jounin smiled and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. The Okage Tower. The Okage was finishing his paperwork with only a few more sheets when a cloud of smoke appeared. The figure was reading an orange book and had the headband over one eye. Mom, Kakashi. What are you doing here? I met up with Naruto a few minutes ago. He was creating his own style of taijutsu based on something he wore. The Okage was surprised before he remembered what happened last night. You mean when he knocked out that Ambu member with his chakra? Yes, and he also masters Enge, Kawarimi and Kajibansin, as he told me. Heh, that guy will never cease to amaze me. He already told you that he's joining the academy tomorrow. Yes, and I'm a little worried about how they're going to teach him. The Okage leaned back in his seat with his pipe in his hand. Don't worry, I know a teacher who won't do anything. The class knows it, yes, but it has taught them morality, and not to be afraid of Naruto. I wish the other teachers had done the same. He said he was learning that in case he needed to protect himself from the villagers, the Cyclops said firm behind his book. I can hardly stand the villagers. Most of these papers demand execution, the old man said pointing to the checkout box. Well, now he won't leave so easily. I'll put him in the initial class. The students will be 3 years older than him, but they will understand the difference between him and Kumi. He knows that. The white-haired man asked. I think so. His father left him an interactive scroll, and he probably explained it to him and apologized profusely. Well, when I get out of the academy, I want to be the one to teach your team, the man said, putting his book away. The old man behind the desk smiled smugly. It's not like he has a choice. A lot of people in CES have a grudge against him, and he's lucky you're willing to help him. So I will contact you when I pass the exams. If you already know how to do the 3 jutsus of the exam, you will probably be there 1 year. But I warn you that he will probably play tricks on you until the end of time if you become his sensei. Kakashi smiled behind his mask and said, how many problems can a 4-year-old cause? If you say that, you don't know the real Naruto. The old man smiled mischievously. The next morning, Naruto woke up with his arapos, which he called clothes. I can't go to my first day at the academy in this, she said, putting on her clothes. Wait, the scroll said Dad left me some cool clothes in the closet. Naruto jumped out of bed and ran to the closet door. He opened it and found a blood seal. He thought it was a blood seal. It was different from the stamps I had seen before. He bit his thumb and grazed it. There was a puff, and a white coat and blue clothes appeared. She smiled and put on her new clothes. Then he felt something in his pocket. He reached in, pulled out a scroll and opened it. That was called the summoning scroll, in case you didn't know. You can find some summoning scrolls in the scroll room. Heh, you sure look like a miniature of me. I'll call him miniature of me. The blonde boy looked at himself in the mirror and looked exactly like his father, except for the marks on his whiskers. The blue clothes had pockets for weapons and equipment, but at that time I did not have any. So he grabbed his parents' picture and put it there. He took the notes blog he had to listen to the classes and ran down the stairs. The blonde guy made more instant ramen and prepared the meal for his first day. When he finished, he ate quickly and threw it away. He ran through the front door and locked it. Naruto jumped with chakra in his legs. The blue spot ran through the streets, unrecognizable to the villagers. He slowed down when he saw the academy. While walking, Naruto felt that all the strange looks were directed towards him. Suddenly, Naruto felt a murderous intent behind his back, getting closer and closer. He turned and dodged a punch. Instinctively, the chakra spiraled around his fist and plunged into the attacker's stomach. The man was thrown against a wall and slid to the ground. He looked like a construction worker. Everyone was looking at him with fear. Naruto tried to calm them down quickly. Hey, he attacked first. I was just defending myself. Don't be afraid of me. I would never attack someone for no reason, but you saw it. Naruto quickly looked at his new watch. Damn, I'm gonna be late. Naruto formed the simple hand signal to control the chakra. The chakra began to rotate around his feet. He shot out down the street with the wind at his back. He landed right next to the academy with a gust of wind at his back. The Hokage was at the entrance to help him. Old man, he said, waving. Just in time, Naruto, but you needed such a destructive input. You know me, said the blonde, scratching the back of his neck. Let's go inside. The two of them entered through the small entrance of the academy. Now Naruto, these kids are 3 years older than you, but don't worry, the teacher I'm assigning you taught them the difference between you and Kyuubi, and he says that everyone treats you like anyone else. Naruto smiled at the thought of normalcy. Thanks, man. The two continued their walk until they reached a gate. The old man played, and Naruto decided to listen. Well, class, here he comes. Remember that he is a few years younger than you, but no one should underestimate him. Aloud I was heard. And the teacher said, you can come in. The Hokage opened the door and the blonde entered. The teacher had a wound on his nose and a ponytail of spiky brown hair. He was wearing a Chunin vest and blue clothes underneath, like Naruto's. The blonde was met with a lot of confused looks. Hello, my name is Iruka Omino, but you can call me Iruka-sensei. Well, this is your class. Would you like to introduce yourself? The blonde nodded and took a deep breath. Hi, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Everyone replied in a trembling voice. Hello, Naruto. And they kept silence so that their teacher could speak. Okay, Naruto, your seat is up there. Iruka pointed to a seat near the bottom. Naruto went up the stairs. He sat next to a girl with marks on her cheeks like claws. He was wearing tight gray shorts. He was also wearing a gray t-shirt with bandages around his forearms. He had a tattoo on his right shoulder. "Hi, I'm Anna Inuzuka, right Naruto?" The blonde nodded her head. "Aren't you a little young to be in the academy?" "Yes, but I'm much stronger than you think. Not many people get to the academy early, especially if they are under the age of 6. I've been at the academy for 2 years, but I only know how to bunsen and enge. I really know how to do kawarimi, enge and cage bunsen. You really can handle all that. Maybe you can help me with kawarimi." "Of course I can help you," the blonde said smiling. "Naruto, let's test your skills. Could you come down, please?" said the teacher looking at Naruto. He nodded and jumped to the ground. "Well, there are 3 jutsus that you need to learn to pass the exam, in addition to a written test and an accuracy test." The boy nodded. "The first one is enge. Put your hands together to make this sign. Then, try to visualize me mentally, compress, and then expand your chakra, and a cloud of smoke will come out." The boy smiled and made the sign. "Enge!" he screamed. A puff of smoke rose and another Iruka appeared. Everyone, including the teacher, gasped. "Hello," the other Iruka said in his own voice. Iruka regained his composure and watched her retort as she disappeared into a smiling blonde. "Well, Naruto, you can sit down again," he said, trembling. This guy could be the next Hitachi Uchiha. Enge on his first try. Naruto returned to his seat next to Anna. "Wow, I guess you weren't lying," he said, smiling, showing his fangs. The blonde smiled and concentrated on the teacher's lessons. A year later, Naruto trained, learning as much as possible from the scarred master. His clothes were still the same as his father's, but without the Chunin vest. He and Anna became a very successful team despite their age. Even she fell a little in love with the guy, waiting for a few more years when he no longer seemed so strange to her. Naruto also became friends with another student named Idate. He was good, but a little cocky. Naruto said that such conceit would hurt him in the end. Her brother was supposed to be a tough Chunin or something. Naruto has also become closer to children his age, especially to Kiba, as his sister frequently asked him for help at home. Her mother doesn't mind Kyugi, but she has teased Anna about her liking for the blonde prodigy. And Kiba, as always, is oblivious to this. The villagers turned away after his encounter with the worker, and he received only worried glances. But all his classmates deeply respect him. Naruto sped through the scroll room, learning his element, which turned out to be the wind, and other simple but effective jutsus. With him, Anna and Idate's ninja puppies working together. They were able to skip some years and were currently in the advanced classes of the academy. He is not treated better or worse because of who his father was or what he had inside. Luckily, she was too young for the fans, and retained the same grace and conceit that she had when she arrived at the academy. Iruka still teaches his classes, but he has become closer to Naruto. They are usually found eating ramen at Ishiraku. The other teachers tried to slow Naruto down with more difficult tests, but he successfully passed them, which made everyone sulk in their corners. Today was the day of the exam, and the 3 of them have been training tirelessly, until they can do enge, kawarimir, and a kind of bunsen while they sleep thanks to the Yondaime scrolls. "It's okay, Uzumaki Naruto, come with me to the examination room," Iruka said with a clipboard. Anna and Ida gave you a thumbs up, and she ran out of the living room. Inside the room, Iruka and another teacher were examining the students. "All right, Naruto, if you get this, you'll graduate in record time. Make any kind of bunsen to try." Naruto clasped his hands together and said Kage Bunsen no Jutsu. 20 Naruto appeared. "Damn it, demon. Why couldn't you just fail?" said the teacher. He pulled out a crib and attacked the real Naruto before Iruka could do anything. Naruto grabbed the mind teacher's wrist and pushed it away. He loaded chakra into his fist and stuck it in the stomach. He flew out backwards, against the wall, with Naruto running towards him. He jumped up and landed a final blow with his foot, throwing the Chunin through the wall into the empty classroom on the other side. In Naruto. Are you okay? Iruka said, worried. I'm fine, sensei. Can I wear my headband? He asked. The Chunin burst out laughing. Close your eyes, Naruto, he said. The blonde guy closed his eyes and felt something wrapping around his forehead. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at his sensei. He wasn't wearing the headband. Congratulations, Naruto, I'm proud of you. Naruto touched his forehead and felt cold metal. Naruto smiled broadly. I'm a ninja. I'm a ninja. The blonde guy ran out of the room into the classroom. He ran to his seat between Ida and Anna. Guys, I'm a ninja. Congratulations, Naruto-kun. Anna said, hugging him. Both of them, realizing what happened, blushed before Ida told you. I heard a lot of loud noises in the other room. What was that? One of the teachers got angry because I passed by and attacked me. I kicked him through the wall into the other classroom. Anna, her dogs and Ida only sweated a drop before the smiling blonde. The next day, luckily for the three of them, the teachers saw how well they worked together, so they put them in the same genie squad. They had been waiting for their new sense for an hour, and they were as bored as ever. To entertain to the maximum, Naruto placed an eraser on top of the door. But that was 20 minutes ago. The new build ended up shooting the eraser at the door while throwing a bucket of water at his sensei's head. And then Naruto transformed into the yondaime. I say we get a catapult, Hidate said before hearing footsteps near the door. Everyone stared at the door until a hand appeared sliding it. The cable tripped, causing the eraser to crash into the man's face. Naruto then performed the hand signals for Eng. The man collapsed holding his face when another cable tripped, overturning the bucket of water. The water splashed the man, and the bucket fell covering his head. The Genin company chuckled when they saw the deceived Jounin. His sensei grabbed the stick and held it up to watch the pranksters. By then, Naruto had finished the Eng and looked like the yondaime. First impression, me. Sensei. The stick flew off the head on a silver-haired Jounin while the latter was fainting. Everyone laughed when they saw the Jounin, now seriously deceived. What a great move, Naruto. Irate exclaimed. Anna added yes, but seriously, I think we should wake him up, Naruto-kun, Anna said wiping her tears. The blonde guy nodded and somehow pulled another bucket of water out of nowhere. It splashed the Jounin's face. Jounin woke up and saw a miniature Minato. Sensei. Almost, but I'm a little shorter, the blonde said smiling. Correction, first impression that I hate you. The sweat of the three Genin fell on him. A few hours later, after the presentations, Kakashi-sensei told them to meet at his training camp early in the morning. He told them not to eat, but they knew better. Since he told us not to eat, we'll all pack soldier pills, Anna said, pulling two packages out of her backpack. He threw them at Naruto and Hidate, nodding. If I had to guess, he's going to put another test on us. Those tests were too easy and we're ninjas, Hidate said, putting them in his backpack. We are at least 4 years younger than normal Genin. We have to stick together. If not, we will collapse, Naruto said following Hidate's example. Let's train now and rest later, the Inuzuka said, receiving a nod from the others. In the office of the Hokage, the old man was staring at his papers once more in the hope of doing it again. Come on, what did I do before? This is terribly painful. Suddenly, a cloud of smoke appeared in front of the old man, causing him no surprise. The figure turned out to be wearing a mask and reading an orange book. Kakashi. What's the news about our favorite blonde? Sandaime asked, lighting his pipe. Well, I just met him and his team. Yes, they played a joke on me and beat me up, actually. What did he do to you? He threw an eraser in my face, threw a bucket on my head, and got into yondaime. The old man chuckled at his misfortune. He is a little violent with his antics, but if you get close to him, he will leave them calmer. So why Naruto, an Inuzuka, and Iviki's younger brother? The masked man behind his book asked. They already work as if they could hear each other's thoughts. It wouldn't surprise me if they were already devising strategies to take you on tomorrow. They are like a well-oiled machine that, when it comes to teamwork, everyone is fast, strong and smart because they help each other. Kakashi put the book away to listen more. They're not even geniuses, and they don't even work together. They were the youngest when they graduated, so naturally they work together. Besides, I've seen Anna stare at Naruto a few times when she thought he wasn't looking. Interesting, I'll see what they can do tomorrow morning. And with that said, Kakashi disappeared in a swirl of leaves. He won't come back alive if he doesn't stay focused, the Hokage said, taking another puff on his pipe. The three of them arrived at the meeting point together. Damn it, we have to wait another 45 minutes. Naruto said, snapping his fists. Well, let's build that catapult, Hidate said. The three of them nodded and started to disperse when their sensei arrived. After what they did to me, I won't give any of you time to prepare a new torture for me. The three of them laughed slightly before letting him continue. Since you are going to be part of my team, I decided to take my own exam to test your skills. The genin sighed, but nodded afterwards. Kakashi was a little surprised by his simple answer. We knew you would test us, so yesterday we practiced to face you. Well, good choice, because basically that's what you'll do. Kakashi reached into his ninja bag and pulled out 2 helmets. Cabels tied with ropes. You will fight me to get one of these. I want to be attacked with the intention of killing me. Kakashi slipped the rope into his belt and crossed his arms. The 3 Geninas felt and pulled out spokes that they were wearing around their necks. Everyone took up fighting positions. Naruto's limbs began to glow and to extract chakra, which began to rotate around his fists and feet. His fists were close to his face, his right leg forward, facing Kakashi, and the left one behind him. Both feet rested facing to his side and left, as did his chest. Anna crouched down with both hands, holding her with her 3 puppies in front of her, growling. Ida released the weights from her legs and threw them near the forest trees, adopting a posture like Naruto's, but bouncing. Ready to move at any moment. Kakashi set an alarm clock on one of the nearby poles. You have until noon to get the bells. Each of the genin reached into their bags and pulled out soldier pills. They put them in their mouths, making sure to give one to each of the dogs. The chakra detached from their bodies and receded until it became a slight glow. They are smart, they did not eat anything, but still got the necessary nutrition from soldier pills. They are a well-oiled machine. But, as they really get along in the battle, be prepared. Ready. All ready, Kakashi shouted. Hidate flew with the first blow. Kakashi was able to dodge it by jumping backwards. Hidate continued with her combos, distracting the Jounin, while Anna, her dogs and Naruto started running across the field towards them. Naruto made a hand signal and shouted Kajeben without no jutsu. Then, 5 clones appeared behind Naruto. Ida T managed to make Kakashi jump in the air to dodge a sweeping kick. The Narutos grabbed the Hounin's arms and legs while the others ran towards him. The dogs bit her limbs while Anna was looking for the bells. Just before Anna arrived at the bells, Su Jounin Sensei's body was enveloped in white smoke before turning into a cut log. The 3 of them landed in front of each other. Channel 2, Naruto said, changing the frequency. From his radio. The other 2 nodded, and the 6 of them jumped into the forest. The masked Jounin came out from among the bushes and returned to the clearing with his arms crossed. It was very close. They could have ripped my arms off with those teeth. What are they planning now? Suddenly, 3 blots came out of the forest to the charge. The masked Hounin jumped back and grabbed one of them. He's one of those dogs. The other 2 blots attached themselves to the man and knocked him down. Then a crash was heard at his feet, and a yellow spot appeared and grabbed his hand. On both legs. Then something flew right at his head and put a cradle and on his neck. Anna now. The blonde screamed. Tsuruga. It exploded from the ground under the masked man. Right next to him, a gray spiral emerged from the ground and snatched the bells from his belt. Anna appeared holding the bells and passed one to her. The man, leaning on the ground, smiled behind his mask and said, "You pass." Several days later, Team 4 has been repeating the same mission over and over for the past few days. Chasing and capturing the daimyo's wife's cat. It's more difficult because Anna made her dogs bark at the red spot, but she still caught it. They even started organizing a contest against the other teams to see who would catch him first. It was like hunting, but with ninjas and cats. Their teamwork only grew since they had a scheduled training and a sensei who told them that they were doing wrong. Naruto still brought some of his father's trolls to training so he could work on more advanced jutsus. Many times, they asked for mock battles with the other teams, which only to completed. They won every time, and even helped the other teams when they reluctantly accepted. Soon Chunin exams began to approach, and Kakashi called them to a meeting to discuss this issue. They arrived and saw their sensei Jounin reading his orange book. "Hi, just to give you a heads up. I registered them for the Chunin exams. I think they'll do well." Kakashi handed a piece of paper to each of them. "You have to sign this and hand it in at the academy on Friday at 15:00. Retired." His sensei disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves. They looked at the papers and looked at each other. "What do you think?" Naruto asked, looking for answers. "I say let's do it. We have the most powerful team attacks. We can wipe out the competition," Idate said. "Idate is right. If we all work together, we can wipe out the competition," Anna said, putting her hand on Naruto's shoulder, making him smile. "Thank you, Anna, I needed it," Naruto said with his slutty smile. "I need to pick up some things from home if we are going to sit for Chunin exams," she added. Naruto, greeting his friends. When Naruto was finally out of earshot, Idate turned to the Inuzuka girl and flashed a complicit smile. "What?" he asked, petting one of the 3 puppies. "And when are you going to tell him?" Idate asked, smiling. Anna blushed immediately. "Please don't tell her, I want to be the one to tell her," Anna said, clasping her index fingers together. "Ah, okay, it's a little hard for me not to like him. I want to wait until it seems less weird to ask her," he said, smiling at her fingers. "It's okay if you don't stare at him when we're fighting." He nodded and went back to petting the puppies. Naruto's house. Naruto had just entered his house and headed straight to the scroll room. He walked in and picked up an orange scroll in the center. He opened it and kanji began to form. "Hi Naruto, it's been a while." Naruto bit his thumb and started writing. "Yeah, anyway, I became a ninja a few days ago, and my sensei just gave me a permit for Chunin exams." "Are you in the Chunin exams? How long have you been a genin? And who is your sensei?" "I've been a genin for a few days, and a guy named Kakashi." "Is Kakashi your sensei?" "Hey, I was his sensei, he probably wanted to teach your team." "Wait, you've been a genin for a few days. Well, congratulations on becoming a genius. Now listen carefully. Under the chair there is a scroll that I left especially for you. I loved using this jutsu, and I made it myself." "Okay, I'll take a look at it. See you later, Dad. We'll talk after the exams." "Very well, remember this. Teamwork should take precedence over everything in exams, never abandon your friends for anything." "Well, I'll see you later." Naruto closed the scroll and got under the chair. There, underneath, was a red and light blue scroll. Naruto took it out and showed it to the light. Rasengan. Naruto put the scroll in his ninja bag and started collecting wind ninjutsu scrolls for himself. Taijutsu for Ida, Taijutsu in Team for Anna, and ran out of the house. A few days later, exams are 1 day away, and Team 4 trains like crazy. Naruto has been learning wind jutsu and the strange Rasengan. It was like one of his chakra pulse punches, but with much more force. Ida T has doubled the weight of her legs and is moving at incredible speeds. He is also learning taijutsu styles originating from clan techniques. Anna and her ninja puppies began to learn more about their clan's techniques, along with new jutsus from the Yondaime scrolls. He also taught them Naruto and Idate to understand them. Tomorrow is Friday, and they are finishing their training. Ugh, that's so hard. I don't think I've ever trained so hard, Idate said, panting. Well, we've never done the Chunin exams before, but I guess it will be difficult, so I'm glad I did, Naruto said, panting as well. Yes, but we all have to work together. We approve, or we suspend, Anna said, sitting down to take a breath. It's easier said than done, but we'll try, Naruto said before the other two nodded. Hey, Naruto-kun, can I talk to you? Anna said, motioning for him to come closer. Well, I have to go. See you tomorrow at the academy, Hidate said, waving and running out. Naruto approached her while they were both sitting down. I know this is going to be a little strange, but I need to ask you. In a few years, when the age difference doesn't matter, would you go out with me? Naruto looked at Linazuka in disbelief. After everything you know about me, do you still want to date me? Anna nodded. Naruto thought for a moment before smiling warmly and saying, of course, that he would go out with you. Is it okay to wait a few years? In an instant, Anna approached the blonde, hugging him. I would wait forever for you to go out with me. Before Naruto could say anything, Anna kisses him on the lips for just a second. I have to go, bye. Anna got up, helping Naruto to get on and ran out with her puppies. Graze on his heels. Naruto touched his lips and thought, why do I have to be 3 years younger than her? Naruto came back wishing that if he was a little older, the date would have happened right away. The next day, it was 2:45, and all the members of Team 4 came in. At the academy. They went up and around the stairs, passing a group surrounding a door. Finally, they entered the room where about 20 more genes were sitting. They walked silently to the wall to the right of the door, leaned on it, and began to plan strategies. Well, I suggest we separate the Amaru brothers. That way we'll all have a good nose and an extra pair of eyes in case we get separated, Anna suggested. The three of them nodded, took one of the puppies, and put it on his head. Remember, either we all pass, or we all fail. We all need each other, Naruto said. Suddenly, a voice came from the front of the room. All right, everybody, shut up. An hour later, the 3 members of Team 4 were anxiously awaiting the 10th question. They were separated and each one had a ninja puppy of Anna on his head. They had to sit in a classroom and steal the answers without being seen, and now they were waiting for the 10th question. Let me say that the question has its drawbacks. They can retire now and play it safe. But if they decide to respond, one of their peers will fail, and it will never be Chunin. Raise your hands if you want to wait until next year. The 3 Genin children looked around until they met and already felt. Trembling, the 3 raised their hands and went out. Only one other group did the same. They went down with their heads down until they opened the door. Each of the unsuccessful participants walked out in a row and closed the door. Just as they were about to leave again, a voice was heard behind them. They chose well, they pass. The 6 turned and saw Idate's brother smiling smugly at them. What? You'll have to consult me about that again, Naruto said, confused. The Scar Man's smile widened, and he pointed towards the inside of the classroom. Everyone looked inside and started listening. Well, since no one seems to be about to give up, it seems that everyone failed. There was an explosion in the room when the classroom Ibiki burst into white smoke and disappeared. The 6 Genin turned to the supervisor in the hallway and said, since there are only 2 teams left, we will have to skip the 2nd exam and go to the 3rd. In a month, come to the stadium in the center of the village. There they will compete in an individual duel between the 2 teams. We will explain later, but you are free to leave now. The opposite Gen team consisted of 2 boys and a girl. One of them was wearing a headband rolled up like a scarf, with some strands of hair protruding from the center. He was wearing a long-sleeved shirt with a high collar and a blue stripe that went around his arms. The other had a swollen nose and 3 bandages, 1 on his chin and 2 on his cheeks. He had 2 big kunai on his back. The girl, however, had purple hair, a black t-shirt, a brown skirt, and fishnet stockings around her legs. She also wore a wooden necklace around her neck and an Oscan look. The boy in the bandana spoke up. Aren't they a little young for the Chunin exams, he said, pointing at them. Well, he said, hide. And why are you trying to become Chunin? The blonde kid looks like he's 5. I'm 5 years old. The two genin opened their eyes wide as they looked at the mini yandame. Naruto smiled broadly, causing the purple-haired girl to open her eyes like plates. Can I talk to you alone? He asked her. The rest of the group turned to look at her before Naruto nodded without saying anything. The two walked away from the group and stopped near another door. You're the guy I saw him sealed with, right? The blonde nodded again. He leaned against the wall, looking down. How are you so happy? I would have collapsed by now if I had to go through that my whole life. And now I do. Naruto looked at her with a questioning and amazed look. My first sensei was a bad person. He left the village with me and betrayed me. Now everyone treats me badly, maybe as badly as you. How can you be happy? I am miserable, he said. Naruto lowered his gaze and leaned on the wall next to her. To tell the truth, I'm not always happy. I just smile a lot so the people I care about don't worry about me. Don't you have someone you care about? The girl turned to him and stared at him before looking down to think. The Okage, I guess. Naruto smiled slightly and said, me too. The old man has done a lot for me, and my companions too. And when I think about them, sometimes it makes me smile. The girl thought for a moment before smiling broadly. I guess you're right, thanks. Naruto nodded before the girl hugged him tightly. She, still with a smile, let go. See you later, she said before returning, finally followed by Naruto. The two genin from Team 4 looked at Naruto confused. It's okay, I just wanted to ask myself something. So why did he hug you? Anna asked. Naruto pondered for a moment as he blushed and scratched the back of his neck. Huh. Did I need one? He asked. Anna narrowed her eyes. Well, he replied, crossing his arms. Naruto turned around and saw the other team walking away. Hey, I didn't catch your names. He screamed. They turned around, and the ninja with the bandana said, I am Kamizuki Izumo. The bandaged ninja said, I am Yagane Katetsu. The purple-haired girl dramatically pointed at them before shouting, I'm Mitarashi Anko, be careful before I beat you up. The other 5 sweated a drop, and the team left followed by Team 4. A few minutes later, the 6 genin rushed out of the academy, with an angry crowd behind. Obviously, they weren't happy that they came all the way to Konoha to get knocked out in the first round, and that didn't sit well with the others. After a few short waves between the ninjas, they separated, which divided the crowd as well. They ran through the streets, winding between alleys, until they found Naruto's house and entered. Is this your house? Wow, that's pretty big. Hidate said, scanning the interior of the building with his gaze. Yeah, I just need to do something quick, guys, Naruto said before retreating to one of the nearby rooms. Naruto entered the scroll room and opened his favorite scroll. Hi Naruto, how did you do in the exams? After reading the kanji, the blonde bit his thumb and began to write in the space below. I passed the first part of the exam. He said that if my team tried to answer the 10th question and accepted, one of us would be genin forever. If we were wrong, we'd all be genin forever. But we all retired early when he asked, we went out, and the real one was standing there. He said that we didn't have to do the second part of the exam, and that we had a month until the third. The blood seeped out, and his father formed a response. How lucky that you don't have to take the second part of the exam. She has the lowest score of the entire exam. How many teams are left? Then, Naruto started writing more kanji on the scroll. I met the other team we would be playing against. The girl seemed really depressed before I cheered her up. Well, I'm proud of you, and I always will be. Anything else? Naruto thought for a moment before he started writing. One of my teammates is Anna Inuzuka. She is 3 years older than me, but yesterday she asked me if I would date her when we are older. Naruto let his statement leak out before more kanji started coming in. And Inuzuka. Interesting. Well, when the time comes, tell me how it is. Anything else? No, that's it. I'll talk to you after the exams, and I'll keep an eye out for that guy Jiraiya. Okay, I'll see you later. And Naruto rolled up the scroll and met him. He placed on the table just in time to see his companions and the puppies enter. So this is your dad's scroll room, wow. It's quite big, Hidate said looking around. What is that? Anna said pointing to the scroll that Naruto had left a few moments ago. My dad left me this scroll. It's like an interactive scroll. If I start writing things on it, the things my dad would say would turn out great, wouldn't it? The other two nodded and started to look around. There are a lot of elementary jutsus here, huh? He said. Jonah looking at the scrolls. Naruto nodded and went to a drawer. He opened it and took out 3 sheets of paper. He passed them to his companions as he explained. These pieces of paper are called elementary paper. If you inject chakra into them, you can find out what your element is. And with the help of these scrolls, we can learn a lot of simple techniques. Just inject some chakra into them, and I will tell you what element you have. They both nodded and cringed for a moment. Anna's crumbled, turning into a rock, while Ida's crumpled. Anna, yours is earth and Ida's is lightning to you. Mine is wind. Naruto walked around the room grabbing random scrolls and piling them in his arms until he lost his sight. He walked like a drunk until he found the table in the center of the room and left them all. Why don't we break up for training this month so we can all focus on learning techniques? Ida said to the others. Do you mind? I have a jutsu that my father gave me specifically, Naruto said. Sounds good to me. I should probably ask my mom to help me. With the jutsus of my clan, Anna said, scratching the heads of her dogs. So it's decided. We'll train separately until the day of the exams, okay? The 3 of you nodded. You can use the scroll room if you want, but don't open the interactive scroll, please. The other 2 nodded and smiled. Naruto helped them seal their scrolls into containment scrolls, and they left with a wave of the hand. Naruto sighed and put his feet on the table after sitting down. She raised her right hand and caused the chakra to flow around her, turning into a pointed ring surrounding her. What do I have to learn to pass the exams? Naruto tried to speed him up and slow him down to work on his chakra control. The chakra pulse is effective, but it is not a devastating blow. The blonde then decided to simply release the chakra and it exploded. And what about the defense? I have nothing in case his attacks are stronger than I thought. Naruto took one hand and slid it over his stomach. Cue me. Naruto got up and started walking through the scrolls looking for a historical scroll. He had never been interested in history, but when you wear a sealed kitsune, sometimes it changes you a little. Finally, he found a red and black scroll that seemed to collect more dust than all the others. It read the Kubino Kitsune in kanji. Naruto took it out carefully and left it on the table. He opened it carefully and began to read, determined to finish it by tomorrow. The next day, the sun barely peeked through the konoha trees, reaching everyone present. The sunlight came through the window of the Namikaze house and reached the eyelids of its only resident. Naruto opened his eyes and fell asleep on the scroll he was reading. I had finished it the night before, and it went out like a flame the next instant. The Kyuubi turned out to be a very interesting topic. In truth, the fox caused the boy a lot of pain, but he must say that he did not want to fight with it without sealing it. If anything seemed interesting to Naruto, it was that the Kyuubi would have done anything to survive. He was determined not to give up and not to die. So, coincidentally, if Naruto found a good reason for the Kyuubi to help him, he could become incredibly strong. But there was a problem: the seal. Her father had done wonderfully, as was deduced from the yanda and megabyted notes on the parchment as fragments. Kyuubi's skill was pure strength. It may not seem impressive at first, but that's until you realize its importance. If you turn pure chakra into pure chakra, expect not to interfere. So, if he was able to learn how to control the Kyuubi chakra, or make his chakra like the Kyuubi's. The question of becoming Hokage is simply how old are you? Naruto frowned, though he had to break the seal to allow it. And that could only happen through an overflow of powerful emotions. For example, the death of a friend, that was a problem. He didn't want any of his friends to die, but to protect them with that power. No, he didn't mean to get powers like Samacha. He had had them in his classes, and some were acceptable, especially the girls. Naruto was quite popular for being a prodigy, but he didn't let them get away with calling him that. Damn. I would still be at the academy if it wasn't for the help of Anna and Date. But still, with all that pure power, he could defeat his enemies just by looking at them. That would be amazing. But while he was finishing thinking, he got up and left. Maybe I got lucky, and something else happened that triggered it. Naruto was about to open the door for a walk when he opened it, and a man, clad in armor, Hounen, was standing with his hand raised, as if to strike it. The weird thing about Naruto was that this guy looked like he was about 11 years old. She had jet black hair, open from the middle, which made the badges on her headband easily visible. He also had two dark onyx-colored eyes that looked with surprise at the door opening prematurely. The two of them stared at each other for a few moments when Naruto said, "Hi." The boy came out of his stupor and put on a loving face. "Hello, Uzumaki Naruto, right?" Naruto nodded. "Well, I'm Uchiha Itachi." Naruto's mind lit up at the thought of the name. Wait, I remember that name from somewhere. Naruto put his hand to his chin and started thinking about the possible times he had heard that name. Naruto opened his eyes and said, "Wait a second. Kakashi-sensei said something about me beating you at graduation, right?" Itachi nodded. "Yes, you beat me by 2 years," he said, closing his eyes with an even bigger smile. Naruto took the opportunity to examine his outfit better. "Why are you wearing jounin clothes? You look like you're about 11 years old," he said. Itachi opened his eyes and, with a slight mocking smile, said, "Well, that's because I'm jounin." Itachi stopped smiling to speak with a more authoritative tone. "I remember last year you were able to knock out an Ambu member." They both smiled to themselves at that particular memory. Itachi remembered all the hard training and teasing that guy suffered. Most of the jokes involved sending him to the academy. Tenzo became enraged after that and vowed to take revenge on the young blonde man, who paid 10 times more. "And I wanted to meet you in person as a fellow child," he concluded. Naruto and Itachi's eyes also narrowed, because apparently everyone who graduated at a normal age calls them a boy. A little boy, a young man, and many other things. "Well, thank you, I'm glad someone recognizes my work," Naruto said, smiling, and Itachi smiled back. Naruto, still with a smile, said, "Well, thank you, Itachi-san. See you later. I have to train for Chunin exams." That caught Lucia's attention, and she caught the door as it closed. Oops. The Chunin exams. How are the Chunin exams? Yes, all the other genin failed except me and another group, so they went straight to the third part of the exam. Is something wrong? Oh, nothing. Hitachi said, but inside he was crying, pretending. This guy is making me evident in all my records. The Uchiha paused and asked, "Hey, would you like to train with me?" Naruto raised an eyebrow and said seriously. Then Itachi said, "Sure, why not?" Naruto immediately smiled. He closed the door and yelled at Itachi to catch up with him or he would be left behind. For a Hinshiriki, he seems too energetic even for a normal person. Training camps. The two underage ninjas appeared at a little-used training camp. It was a field surrounded by trees, with some trees in the center and a river running through it. "It's okay, kid." Naruto growled at Itachi while saying that, causing Itachi to laugh slightly. "Show me what you got." Itachi put one hand on his sword, though other than that he remained motionless. Naruto, about 4.5 meters away, jumped back. And he began to make manual stamps. He raised his right hand, bringing his thumb and forefinger together, and blew through it. Futonda and Toppa. He watched Itachi without his Sharingan as the wind picked up in his hand and saw a strong gust the size of a house heading towards him. Itachi took his hand away from the sword and, in an instant, performed the hand seals for his jutsu, and hit the ground with his hands. Totondoro Gessi. Itachi watched as a rectangle of land in front of him separated from the rest and rose up. The last thing he saw was the gust of wind just 1.5 meters away. When the barrier received the impact, the rock began to crack on the outside, and the sides began to erode from the wind. The wind started to pick up, and Itachi was about to look around the wall when a burst of chakra pierced through it, revealing Naruto with outstretched fist and flying through. You see from the wall. Itachi saw the movement and wondered what the genin had just done as Naruto approached with another blow. Itachi bent down and silently activated his 3-Tomo Sharingan. He saw how the chakra gushed from Naruto's fist and was expelled from the tenketsu in his hands, which forced him to raise an eyebrow. From this crouching position, Itachi pushed his center of gravity back, grabbing the ground with his hands and lunging at Naruto, hitting him in the stomach. Naruto was thrown backwards through the hole in the wall and kept flying. Itachi deactivated his Sharingan and, taking advantage of the momentum of his feet, swung forward and landed on his feet. The Uchiha looked up and saw Naruto, still in the air, smiling smugly and clasped his hands together. Futon replaced. Naruto brought his open hands to his chest and pushed them forward. 2 gusts of wind came through the hole and headed towards Itachi. Itachi only had a second and started spinning backwards. However, Itachi's left hand was hit by one of the wind blows, which propelled his arm backwards, causing Itachi to rise from the ground in a whirlwind towards one of the inner trees. As this was happening, Naruto threw his feet back and landed on one of the outer trees with a crunch. Naruto grunted as he felt the strength in his legs for an instant and fell to the ground on his hands and knees. Naruto looked up and saw Itachi crashing into a tree, but at the last moment he grabbed onto one of the hands and turned the other way to land on his feet. Naruto, taking advantage of this moment to act, jumped up, pulled out a kuna, and ran towards the fallen Hounen. Itachi looked up from his landing and saw Naruto running at full speed with a kune. Itachi reacted immediately and took the sword off his shoulder just in time to block the vertical blow. The two remained in balance, with both swords rubbing together. Itachi took the opportunity to speak. "All right, Naruto, you've got Chunin wood. Maybe I should stop giving you so many presents." Itachi smiled sarcastically, while Naruto growled, but then Itachi tilted his sword, and Naruto's white cradle slid to the edge. Itachi pulled back the sword and slashed Naruto's cheek. The Uchiha expected to see blood, but it took him by surprise when it disappeared in a cloud of smoke. A shadow clone. Itachi turned towards the shattered wall to see the real Naruto jump up from behind and lunge again, this time with his fist back, ready to release another chakra discharge as Itachi performed several hand seals. Naruto suddenly stopped when Itachi shouted Katen Husenka no Jutsu. A shower of small fireballs escaped from Itachi's mouth and flew towards Naruto. Naruto dodged the first ones by skidding to the left, the next one by jumping to the right. The last wave was much more complex. Insert slow motion. Naruto just threw his head back, making a matrix, to dodge the first two. Naruto looked down and saw that another one was passing under him because of the heat, almost setting his battle coat on fire. And another one was rubbing his left shoulder. Naruto hissed in pain as the fireball slightly burned his shoulder, thankful that he hadn't set his coat on fire. Release in slow motion. And Naruto fell to the ground without much drama. He clutched his shoulder in pain and looked up to see how the sun was eclipsed by the shape of Itachi with the drawn sword. Naruto, with a shot of adrenaline, forgot. For a moment, the pain in his shoulder rolled over his healthy shoulder, and he used the strength of his arm to pull away. Naruto turned his legs and landed feet first, to see Itachi land gracefully, making more signs with his hands. Naruto looked down at his shoulder and saw a burnt hole in his coat, revealing his healing skin. The blonde guy looked back and saw Itachi saying Katango Kakyu no Jutsu. A much larger fireball was conjured up and shot towards Naruto. Itachi watched as the fireball seemed to engulf the blonde and became a little worried. The fire dissipated, revealing a charred log and Naruto's battle cloak lying to one side. Itachi looked towards the small forest with the river and deduced that Naruto must have taken refuge there. Naruto was taking shelter among the trees, leaning on a tall branch, holding his shoulder, panting. His healing ability was good, but a biju has its limits. Naruto reached into his bag and pulled out a healing tail and a bandage big enough for the wound. Naruto was wearing at that time the typical blue pants and sweatshirts that were seen in Konoha, along with the arm protections, wrists and shins that her father also had. Naruto applied the cream carefully and kept his mouth closed so as not to even growl, for fear that Itachi would know where he was. Naruto sighed to himself. Itachi was not at all a pusillanimous. He rightfully deserved the Hounen gear he was wearing at the time. The blonde slipped the patch over the burn, which was already healing, and patted it to make sure it didn't fall off. Naruto dared to look down from the branch and almost gasped when he saw Itachi standing there. Then, Naruto started thinking of some plan to distract him, and at least be able to get out of the trees. He even went so far as to make Kajibans for Itachi to chase after them when, suddenly, he felt something brush his right shoulder. It looked like air, but it wasn't constant like the wind, it was more like a gasp. Naruto now had the feeling that someone was watching him from 7 centimeters away. Slowly, Naruto turned his head to see Itachi with a flashlight under his chin, like it was an old monster movie. Naruto screamed and turned away from the left branch. As he was flying back, Naruto turned to see Itachi chuckling. Naruto just smiled with a sneer as he took a deep breath. Itachi stopped laughing and looked up to see almost the same image. Naruto, now completely filled with air, began to accumulate chakra in his lungs. He extended his right hand and said, "Renkudan Futon." And Naruto hit his chest with his right hand, letting out a breath of air from the blonde's mouth. Itachi opened his eyes wide and only had a second to dodge the basketball-sized ball of concentrated wind. He jumped to the other end of the branch and turned to see how the side of the nearby tree was impacted and torn off in a big piece by the compressed air. Itachi turned to look at Naruto just as he was repeating the action 2 more times. The Hounen jumped onto a branch above him, narrowly avoiding the 2 projectiles that hit the branch, destroying it. Itachi looked at him again and saw that one last projectile, much larger than the others, was heading straight towards him. There was a huge explosion, and Naruto saw Itachi flying through the air, only to see him disappear into a mutilated log. Naruto landed on a distant branch and began frantically searching for his opponent. His attention turned to the nearby river, where he saw Itachi making hand stamps and saying his Iten Suigaden. 5 small whirlpools were created around Itachi. Torrents of water came out of them, in the form of felling, and headed towards Naruto. The blonde made a hand signal and shouted Kajeban without no jutsu. A cloud of smoke arose from it, from which 20 clones of Naruto came out. At the same time, everyone jumped up to dodge the drills and began to disperse through the forest. Upon landing, all the clones jumped towards Lucia. Several clones were knocked down by the drills, but the rest were very close, forcing Itachi to stop the jutsu. Itachi pulled out his sword and started slashing at the clones. 5 clones later, Itachi was getting tired and decided to end the attack. Itachi activated his Sharingan and flew into the air. He floated by sheathing his sword and taking out some kunai. Itachi turned upside down and began to concentrate. A moment later, he took aim with the kunai at the clone massacre. The kunai, after embedding themselves in the clones, became walls where other kunai bounced against other clones. Naruto was hiding behind a tree, listening to his clones being destroyed one by one, but that wasn't what scared him. He remembered dying. Images of kunai embedded in his arms, legs and torso flooded his mind. It must be the memories of my clone. Naruto was interrupted when he saw 2 kunai collide in front of him. Then, one of the kunai moved towards his face. In a split second, Naruto fell to the ground, letting the kunai become embedded in his head. Naruto was about to jump out of there when he felt a cold metal against his neck. He turned around and saw Itachi looking at him with an appreciative smile. "Excellent, Naruto. You certainly have Chunin wood." Itachi let go of the blonde and sheathed his sword. Naruto, with a worried expression, asked, "Hey, wait a second, will you still train me? Right?" Itachi nodded and made a gesture to follow him, which Naruto did. "Naruto, I'd like to tell you about that time you broke the barrier at the beginning of the fight. Your taijutsu reminded me a little bit of Tsunade from the Sannin. Naruto looked at him confused, noticing that Itachi didn't know who he was. You just needed to know that she possibly had the most chakra control and used it to reach a higher force in the world. And very few people could recreate that. Obviously, you don't have those chakra levels, and that's the problem. You are seriously damaging the tenketsus, and yes, if you continue to do so, you could permanently damage them. Naruto was taken aback by this. The taijutsu he possessed was one of the few things he could use as a safety measure if the situation got complicated. Wait, I can't use chakra pulse anymore. Hitachi thought for a moment and said, well, not quite. Eventually you will master the chakra. We'll just have to teach you about the Kajibans, and then we'll do some moves so you can use them whenever you want. It is not a style, but rather an organized fight. Naruto, a little downcast, perked up as he finished the explanation. With eyes full of stars, he immediately stood his ground and said, I'm ready, Itachi-sensei. Itachi looked at the boy covered in bruises, burns and cuts, and came back for more. This was going to be a long month. Kier Monument, I date. Morino turned around and saw his sensei returning with something in his hands. Idate had been going over sweeping moves and accumulating chakra in the palm of her hand. During and between her initial encounter with Kakashi yesterday, the object he was carrying looked like a short sword that can be strapped to his back. Kakashi grabbed the handle hard and took out a point. This and a few other things are what I'm going to show you. Kakashi raised the sword and cut it. A white chakra extended from the blade, making it appear longer until it crashed to the ground, cutting off 1 meter more from the point of impact. This belonged to my father. The White Fang of Konoha. Inuzuka compounds. Tsuruga. The Inuzuka screamed as it transformed into a corkscrew his hand and flew towards his opponent. Anna ran towards her mother, but dodged her by inches, but missed at the last moment. Well, Anna, enough of the physical training, Tsume said. Anna landed next to her mother and looked around to see where the Amaru brothers were while asking, so we are doing more than just physical training. Sumiya felt and took out 2 scrolls from her bag. One said Doten, and the other me, which meant doctor. Anna knew it was the first one, but the second one posed some questions to her. Seeing her confusion, the Inuzuka matriarch spoke up. Anna, you have excellent chakra control. Much greater than that of other people in the compound. I want you to learn the basics of medical jutsu. As a medical and veterinary ninja of the enclosure, it will be useful to you in the future. Anna looked at the scroll that Tsume threw at her as she spoke, and, looking up, nodded determinedly. However, given the brief opportunity, Tsume said, with that you can save your boyfriend from dying on the battlefield. Getting a giggle from the ninja dogs present, and from Tsume herself. Anna growled and shouted caution. The steady wind whistled by the battered training ground, continuing among the trees, grass and dirt removed from the previous day. A lonely boy, less than 12 years old, was standing in a lonely tree, overlooking the open space where the remains of a shattered wall. Burn marks and wind chakra fragments lingered through the night. The lonely boy, a prodigy of his kind, let his young mind remember the moments more darkest of his life, remembering failed missions, the losses of loved ones and close ones. The war between his hometown and the victims of another, as they were transferred one after another to the hospital, where many of their loved ones have also died. He waited for the blonde who caused much of the devastation he saw today to show up in the morning at the specified time. Itachi, then, moved on to a memory closer to the present. When he became a Hounin, many of his classmates approached him and asked if he wanted to join a squad. Surely some of his greatness could infect his subordinates, but due to his young age, it would be too troublesome to teach someone who was probably older than him. Instead, he stayed in the rank missions, and is one of the best for it. Even his own superior, the Okage, was talking to Commander Ambu to see if he could be included in one. But now he was faced with a very difficult decision. What can I teach you? That was the problem in a nutshell. The blonde was an enigma at first. Using weights was a simple and effective option, but she could not develop it because of her age. A human doesn't start building muscle mass until puberty, and Naruto was half that age. Itachi was carried away by time until he was Naruto's age. His classmates despised him because they were the normal age for graduation, 12, and he was half of 6. His skill lay in the speed and precision of his punches, with a lot of effort. His companions possessed brute strength, but he was much more agile and cunning. Naruto had a lot of similar implications, and is possibly better due to his huge chakra reserve. In fact, he had twice as much as a lower-level Hounen. But his control is very interesting. The blonde guy learned to walk on trees from a young age, thanks to one of the stories of a child. Because he did not have as much chakra as later on. If he had waited until he was 12, it would have taken him much longer to get it. Possibly an entire day instead of his apparent 15 minutes of fame. With your high control now, you just need to strengthen it as you get stronger, and if you do a lot of chakra exercises, to maintain your growing chakra reserve. Speaking of chakra supply, the shadow clones he showed yesterday are extremely useful. He can create about 200 before getting tired, they deduced after the session, thanks to his good control. That's a big plus, and Itachi knew what the shadow clones' bonuses were, and if he used them right, Naruto could become a Hounen in less time than could be predicted. However, that was a big step. Itachi will make it very clear to Naruto not to use it often. The blonde's brain is still developing and could be permanently damaged. Part of being a Hounen is having the necessary experience for the level. You can have the level of a cage, but if you don't have experience, you will fail. Also, Naruto seems to be pretty smart. Perhaps the Kyuubi became interested in the child and granted him some improvements when he activated his chakra. The activation of his chakra could have awakened the inner Kyuubi and granted him some changes. Itachi denied with his face. Head. He was getting off topic, and there were too many variables to start making assumptions about a powerful demon sealed in a child. With the very power of a Shinigami. Itachi then thought about how he knew Kajibun-sen. Maybe if I added something about the clones, they could be more destructive. Hey, Itachi-sensei. The Uchiha looked down and saw Naruto in his long blue shirt and pants, a crib bag and a shuriken cover. He had his arm protectors tied to his arms, but under his shirt, as usual, but his white coat was missing. What? Are you not wearing a coat this time? Itachi asked with a slight laugh. Naruto grunted, slightly remembering how he chose not to wear the coat that day. Flashback scene. Naruto, already with his outfit on, was preparing a quick breakfast with something healthier than everyday ramen. I hated the vegetables that sizzled in the cup, but they were part of a child's diet. So, when he came home with his battle-worn coat, he dressed up to look like a normal boy with brown hair and green eyes, and bought vegetable ramen, as he did for everyone. Their needs. Naruto didn't see it coming, as it was the first time it had happened. When turning with a cup of hot instant vegetable ramen, her cape prevented her from passing, and she stepped on it. With the cloak firmly attached, Naruto's torso was knocked over, and he fell with the ramen straight to his face. The ramen burned his face as Naruto screamed. Naruto used the collar of his coat to wipe his face and try to ease the stabbing pain. Naruto openly cursed at the coat and the ramen as he quickly threw them on the couch. End of the flashback. We can get started, Itachi-sensei. Itachi let out another giggle and let himself fall to the ground. All right, Naruto. To start with your training, I will show you how I am going to train you. Remember that the way I am going to train you is very dangerous, and I will not allow you to do it often, okay? Naruto stared at his master, nodding as he finished. What kind of training would Itachi only allow Naruto to do at the end? All right, Itachi-sensei. Did you notice anything near the end of the fight when I was eliminating your clones? Itachi asked. Naruto remembered, and the thoughts he had came back to his mind. Do I remember that you killed me? Any memories of my clones? He asked. The Uchiha felt that a Sin no Jutsu is a technique used for exploring. You can send a clone to a position, and when it disperses, the memories come back to you, and you can retain the information. Naruto's eyes sparkled with joy. This was an amazing jutsu. He told himself that he should thank his father's scroll. But then Lucia's gaze hardened. You must remember, Naruto. Memories, thoughts, everything your clones do is being recorded in your mind. Anyone could assume that a child who goes through this regularly, that's a bad thing. Naruto seemed to think about it for a moment before asking, "So, what exactly are you going to teach me?" Silence flooded the small training ground. The Uchiha adopted a shy expression and scratched the back of his neck with a childish air. "Well, the truth is, I don't know what to show you." The blond man gasped as he looked at his sensei in bewilderment. After that very cool description, he says he has no idea what to teach me. Then, Naruto thought maybe for a moment that this guy wasn't as cool as he thought. His hand swung flaccidly to the side, still bewildered, and only for an instant touched the crib bag and in his caldera. Impulsively, Naruto quickly went through the list of items it contained and suddenly remembered the weight. Pergamino. Naruto, remembering the scroll, reached into the bag, took out the red and light blue scroll, and looked at the title again. The Rasengan. "Hey, Itachi-sensei, what about this?" Itachi looked down at the scroll. He arched an eyebrow, wondering what jutsu it might contain. Naruto threw it to Lucia, who caught it with little effort. He looked down at the title and opened his eyes wide. The Rasengan was one of the distinctive movements of the Yondaime. I remembered it from Kakashi-senpai's lessons. He carefully opened the scroll and, confirming his belief in Yondaime's writing, explained the mechanics of the jutsu. "Naruto, where did you get this?" he asked. "Don't you pick up legendary jutsus on the streets?" Naruto turned his head and thought for a moment. I think the old man gave it to me. I don't know, it was a long time ago." Naruto in a pensive attitude. Itachi, however, stared at him, still with the open scroll in his hand. But his gaze faded, for the blond man turned his away. He sighed. Maybe the Sandaime gave it to him. And if not, the Hokage should be able to tell you where he got it. He returned to the scroll and noticed the 3 steps, each with its own needs. "I would have to go to the city mall to get a lot of water balloons, rubber balls and normal balloons. Naruto, I have to go to the mall to buy supplies for this training. I'll be out for a while. Why don't you take a walk around here, and I'll look for you when I'm done?" Without waiting for an answer, he turned around and went to the mall. The blonde, after a moment, grunted as he found out that his mishaps to arrive early, including the action of eating, they had been in vain. He sighed when he couldn't find anything to vent his anger with and went to the village hidden among the leaves. The blond man ventured through the streets observing everything that the villagers bought: civilian clothes, food, household appliances. His thoughts interrupted him when someone shouted at him, "I heard blonde Gaki." Naruto turned around and saw in the distance a huge man beckoning him to come in. He forgot all caution and approached. "Hurry, come to our store before everything is sold out for our youth." Naruto arched an eyebrow. Would anyone have to pronounce the word youth ever in their life? Does that word even exist? The man was tall, bald, and with huge eyebrows. He was wearing a green tunic and trousers of a darker green. The store was not very big, about the size of a small house, occupying the ground floor. But Naruto, instead of ignoring him, came closer. No one else would yell at him to come buy something, let alone sell him something. The sign said ninja supplies for youth. He was not surprised to see that no one was there. "My name is Mato Shin, and this is my shop," the burly man roared. Naruto looked at him and saw him with a big smile. The blonde entered the store and began to walk through it. He could see that the equipment was not top quality, but it was much better than his own rusty and dull kunai. He mentally went over a list of the things he needed for his career. "Do you have any clothes?" He saw that the man was even more pleased as possible. Naruto followed the man, who ran to the other end of the store faster than he thought, towards a clothing line. They were all one of various colors. Naruto began to walk around the clothing store, feeling the fabric, which was stretched tightly. He looked back at the man, who was still smiling. With the variety of clothes and the quality of things, he thought he must be the first customer in a long time, or rather, the first person to enter the store in a long time. Naruto asked the smiling man, "Do you have something that consists of pants and shirt, instead of the same, in a one-piece suit. The blonde saw that the man's face contracted into a sad expression and began to cry. Naruto immediately tried to take it back. And no, it's not that I don't like them, it's just that I think they're easier to wear. The son of the yondaime was surprised when the man ran up to him and hugged him tightly. I'm a failure. No one likes to come into my store or like what I sell. Naruto at that moment was being used as a rag doll, while the huge man was shaking him left and right. Naruto tried to get closer to him. No. I think that, he said as he was being shaken. He stopped when the man stopped shaking him and stared into his eyes. Really? Naruto had to look away from the red, watery and swollen eyes. Yeah, maybe if you could get different clothes, better quality gear, and tone down the youthful tone a bit, I think you'd get more customers. Naruto waited for a moment while the man meditated. Naruto was hugged again. Of course, said the man. I must be radiating too much youth and pushing people away. Thank you, young Shinobigaki. With your advice, I will spread youth all over the world. And suddenly, the tent turned into a rocky mound, and Naruto watched in awe and fear as a wave. It was smashing against the rocks behind them, splashing water everywhere. The genjutsu that Naruto assumed ended and the boy was knocked down. Will you promise to come to my store? Naruto thought for a moment. Only if you can get that jumpsuit to fit a little looser and with more space, and some other things I would like to buy today. He pointed to a midnight black jumpsuit. The owner of the store looked at him, and the monkey already felt. And how are you doing with sewing? Later, Naruto left the store with a wave of the hand, taking his new wardrobe with him. Her new look consisted of a black jumpsuit, less tight than before, and on the left side of the leg, sported the Kubino Kitsune, with its 9 tails. He was now wearing white arm guards and shin guards with red flames coming out of the ends. On each side of her hips was a scroll that Shin said had been used by Ni and Sama. Whoever it was. In general, he liked Shin. Will definitely be back for more guns. Elsewhere, the prodigy Uchiha passed by Lokaige's secretary and made the short trip to her office, from where the cage was able to escape, to go find Itachi. He reached the door and opened it with a slight creak after a year of service. He entered the room and saw the Okage, whom he could only guess as Commander Ambu with a ram porcelain mask. Okage-sama. Itachi made a deep bow to him. The Okage nodded, while the Ambu continued to stare at him. Itachi-kun, this is Commander Ambu, and he has agreed to make you one of our Ambu. Itachi looked surprised and bowed again. Thank you for accepting me as Ambu-sama of your regime. The man just nodded and disappeared. Itachi turned to the Okage with an angry expression. Okage-sama, why did you register me as an Ambu? I don't want to be a part of this. The old man's face darkened as he stared at the young man. Itachi, right now you're the only one I can trust with the Ukiyas. I remember that you told me about your family's intentions, and the only way to stop them is to start by entering the Ambo. The old man stepped away from the desk and opened one of the drawers. He reached in and pulled out a bunch of folded black clothes. On top was a white porcelain Ambo mask. He offered her the midnight suit, and Itachi took it with apprehension. He opened a scroll from his Kuna bag and quickly sealed it to present it to his father and the clan chiefs. Itachi-kun, this will be an S-rank mission. The time will depend on the objective, but you need to stay alert. Itachi listened attentively to his first S-rank mission. Later, the new Uzumaki Naruto smiled even more at the sight of his temporary sensei. He raised his arm and waved like the 6-year-old he was. Hey, Itachi-sensei. But the Jounin hardly made a gesture as if to hear him. Naruto ran forward, calling to his sensei again, but nothing. He ran in front of Lucia and started jumping in the air, waving his arms. Hey, Itachi. Itachi seemed to wake up from his stupor as he looked at the blonde who was jumping. Oh, Naruto. I haven't seen you before. I was shouting your name, and you barely flinched, Naruto said. Itachi let out a small snort as he remembered the last few hours. He looked at the blonde and the kunai bag he was carrying, where he kept his Ambu equipment and the mission documents. Hey Naruto, I have the things we need. Why don't we go to the resort? To train for this, I also have something I want to leave you. Naruto nodded, saying that too, as long as they trained. The two turned around and, with Itachi leading the way, headed to the Uchiha complex. Later, at the Uchiha complex, Itachi and Naruto walked through the gates of the complex. There were no guards posted, mainly due to the large size of the complex in the village. The blonde man no longer received angry looks, but he was completely ignored. Naruto imagined an interesting scene about what it would be like to be invisible. It was not far from where it is now. Naruto and Itachi made their way through the small clan crowd to get to the house. It was walled up, completely blocking the view of the citizens, with the symbol of the Uchiha clan every few meters. Two men in bulletproof vests from Konoha were standing guard at the entrance. The blonde followed his sensei out the door, but the guards stopped him in his tracks. They did not say anything when they caught him, nor did they open their eyes. Itachi turned to the 6-year-old boy, held tightly by the bodyguards. "Oh, I'm sorry, Naruto, I forgot you were with me." Naruto sweated out a drop, while in the clutches of the two robotic sentinels. "Wait for me out here, I'll be right back." He turned around and disappeared into what appeared to be a main building. Uzumaki grumbled as he was released by the guards. Naruto watched the blue stars with the Uchiha in the center, on his biceps. Both were Naruto's guess of Uchiha. The one on the left had a shiny nose piercing that glistened in the light. He was wearing a kind of flat moikan that reminded him of a deserted asphalt road near this very complex. The other was a shorter shinobi, but he looked much older than the young man with a nose piercing. He had a thin mustache and greasy black hair, and looked a little overweight for a regular on missions. Behind her eyelids, onyx black orbs were visible waiting to be exposed to the light. Naruto took a cautious step towards Mustache. He waved both arms in the air in front of his face as if he were pointing to a ship from a deserted island. The man did not even flinch. If not for their previous encounter, the blonde would have believed that they had died standing up. Naruto tried to snap his fingers in front of the man's chubby face, but he remembered that he couldn't do it. Maybe Hidate and Anna, saying he was crazy, have some advantage. Cautiously, he took another step toward the no-crossing line and began to touch the stubby mustache exterior. He pushed the expanded stomach harder, and his finger sank deeper into the organic porridge. Mustache, however, stood his ground and did not even flinch. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the man who didn't move an inch after bothering him so much, which used to irritate anyone. The young shinobi turned his attention to Moat with a malicious smile. Uzumaki set out to drive one of them crazy. Why? Because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Where Naruto got bored, and when Naruto got bored. Naruto immediately began to push the boy with all his might. After making contact, his hand withdrew, and he came back for more with another push. Someone might think that he was performing the legendary Akurokuju Jansu of the Yuguga clan. The teenager began to shudder and get angry, trying not to move, no matter how annoying this child was. 15 minutes later, Hitachi started walking back from his room, after hiding the quest scroll. And the scroll he had been given to keep the news. He looked up and saw it right in front of him. Corpses strewn on the ground, blood splatters, black flames, and a little brother. Terrified. He thought the entrance was a funny place. Naruto was poking one of the guards like there was no tomorrow, and the guard looked like he was about to crack. He looked to the right and saw two Konoha policemen coming to the door. "Hey Masa, your shift is over." As he finished the sentence, a loud roar was heard at the door. "Ah! Damn it, Gaki, stop poking me." The teenager roared. Naruto jumped back surprised that it really moved. Itachi appeared next to Naruto and said, "I think we should leave now, Naruto." The boy nodded, and they both ran away from the angry teenager. Escaping from Mott was easy. The two backed away, letting the teenager run past, without him noticing, letting himself be carried away by his testosterone-charged anger. They looked at each other in a pause, momentarily, and they began to laugh. The laughter was brief and quick, as the two returned to the center of the street after a few moments. Come on, Naruto, I have everything to start with the Rasengan. Itachi and Naruto quickly arrived at a Uchiha training camp, where Itachi took out a scroll from his back bag. With a flick of the wrist, it opened and expelled a cloud of white smoke. Several large bags came out, one filled with what Naruto thought were colored balls. Itachi reached in and took one, which waved in his hands. Itachi's pause sparked Naruto's imagination. "Are we going to have a water balloon war?" he said with a hint of hope. Itachi's small smile faded into a face that said, "You're kidding, right?" But he immediately remembered that he was a 6-year-old boy. "No, we're going to have to burst this chakraless balloon," Itachi said wisely. He threw the water balloon at Naruto, who caught it easily. "Blow it up with our chakra," he asked the people Ambu. After a pause, he added, "That you mean the chakra pulse." Itachi nodded. The first step was for your chakra to have enough strength to burst a balloon. Itachi took out the red and light blue scroll and passed it to Naruto, who opened it, and noticed a diagram of what appeared to be lines drawn in a circle. Naruto put down the scroll and put both hands on the balloon, one up and one down. He concentrated on the openings of his hands and began to release chakra. After introducing an appropriate amount, he began to move it inside the balloon, pushing it back and forth. He noticed visibly that the balloon was moving with the water. Naruto looked up to see if Itachi was watching him. But this one was looking at the scroll that Naruto had dropped. Naruto tried to move him a little more and found that the exercise was very easy. "I will finish this jutsu by evening." It moved his chakra and propelled him forward. He saw that the balloon was almost breaking when, suddenly, it burst. A hole appeared in the front of the balloon, and the water and chakra escaped through the same hole. The chakra scattered, and the water dripped to the ground. Itachi turned to look at the boy with a surprised expression. "That counts, Itachi-sensei." Itachi looked at the balloon and said, "Are you happy?" he said, and pulled out a balloon. He looked at it and started planning how he was going to try it. Naruto looked at the balloon in his hand before letting out a childish sigh. He threw it on the ground and quickly grabbed another one from one of the bags. Itachi seemed to keep watching him, analyzing him like a strategist before a map. Naruto grabbed his balloon and concentrated on the one he was holding. "I had to blow it up, not just blow a hole in it. Perhaps if I made the chakra move in a circle, the balloon would explode in all directions." He started pushing the water in a circle and was a little glad to see it. Now, if he can get it to move enough, it will explode. An hour later, Naruto was deeply frustrated. He had been circling the palm chakra for much longer than he would have liked, and now he was declaring that that was not the way to do it. Itachi-sensei was still staring at the balloon, absolutely motionless. "Stupid technique," he said and threw the balloon to Itachi. The balloon seemed to embed itself in Itachi's crotch, prompting a high-pitched squeal from the ninja. Naruto, however, turned to face the rest of the forest clearing. He saw the wind moving the grass from side to side. He kept watching as the wind changed direction. After several seconds, he opened his eyes wide. He turned and ran to the red and light blue scroll on the floor. Itachi kept moaning in pain, thinking about the moment the balloon exploded and gave him whiplash. Naruto took the scroll and quickly began to open it. He found the diagram and stared at it intently. He opened his eyes wide and smiled to himself. "It's so simple." The doodles didn't just represent chakra, Naruto thought as he picked up a new water balloon. He was holding it with both hands, one up and one down, indicating the direction they should go. Naruto began injecting chakra into the balloon, shooting it in random directions towards freedom, forcing the water to follow him. Naruto watched as the balloon seemed to bubble. He smiled grimly as he kept his concentration. Naruto finally knew he was headed in the right direction. He started adding more chakra, making it more fierce. The stretch increased around the balloon as it suddenly swelled. Mind. Black pop. The water balloon burst in his hands, and Naruto smiled with joy. Yes. He raised his hands for emphasis. He turned around and saw Itachi on the ground, but motionless. Then a recent memory came to mind. "Are you happy with this?" Naruto looked at the pieces of balloon in his hands. He smiled to himself. I guess I'm not done yet. Without a word, he grabbed another water balloon. Maybe I could completely destroy the balloon or do it faster, maybe even do it with one hand. Somewhere else? So how am I supposed to use it if I can't see? Asked the Morino, who now had a sword parallel to his column. The sensei simply smiled at him. Then you will have to learn to fight blindly. And this is good, because I was planning to train in blind fighting anyway. Dusk was beginning to give way to dusk, which meant the end of the day for most of the inhabitants of Konoha. But for the most stubborn shinobi, the possibilities simply changed. I wonder how Naruto will be, Hidate said, almost to himself. Kakashi caught the comment and simply smiled. If I know him, I think he's fine, he said. Hidate, 8, smiled to himself and nodded. If anything, he should worry about how he would survive against Naruto. Early morning. The wind kept blowing through the trees, until finally it touched the forest clearing, where a blond boy was sleeping leaning against a big tree. The sun was starting to peek through the forest, illuminating various surfaces, including Naruto's face. Naruto moved and soon stretched out on the floor. He opened his eyes and quickly remembered what happened yesterday with a smile. The memories of yesterday's training came with the feeling of success. He finally managed to do it with one hand and destroy the balloon, after a lot of practice and concentration. Naruto turned his head towards the motionless figure of Itachi Uchiha. Fortunately, he was able to fall asleep after so long in a trance. A loud crash reached his ears, a sign that he had not eaten anything since yesterday. But I could really blame him. He learned the first part of the series from one of his father's precious jutsus. With that, I would have forgotten something so insolent. Significant as hunger. He stood up slowly, making sure to crack every joint possible. Naruto turned to his sensei, who by chance fell asleep in the fetal position. He approached Itachi and started kicking him. Hey, Itachi-sensei, I'm going to eat something. Illuchis moved slightly and looked at Naruto. Is it dark yet? He asked the blonde as he noticed the orange sky above them. Naruto stared at him and looked at the rising sun again. No, it's the sunrise, you haven't moved since we started training, Naruto said with a serious face. Itachi had the decency to look surprised and a little embarrassed. But he remembered clearly where he was going. He sat up and looked around. At one point, there seemed to be a large burst water balloon. He turned to Naruto. So you've completed the first part of the training. Naruto seemed to smile, but another growl from his empty, churning stomach alerted him to the urgent matter. I'm going to have breakfast. Naruto turned around and started running. See you later, Itachi-sensei. Itachi watched Naruto run away with a faint smile. He looked at the open scroll again. As a curiosity, the author of the scroll wrote down how long it took Yondaime to complete the jutsu and how long, according to him, it would take an average ninja. His eyes widened when he saw the date of the first part. 10 months. And this little bastard did it in a few hours. At the village, Naruto had already wandered into the village, back to his house, where an instant ramen was waiting for him. Lately, after the moment with the worker before going to the academy, the villagers tended to completely ignore him. With a hint of hatred, he could practically disappear into the crowd, and no one would listen to him. But, to tell the truth, he didn't care. He didn't have to worry about them right now. He only had to worry about his team, his sense, and the Okage. And if she could count inanimate objects, that picture of her parents with a pregnant kitchen, and her father's scroll. Everyone else was a spectator watching his immediate life, and his big 6-year-old smile. And she wasn't going to let ignorance ruin her radiant smile. Hey, Naruto turned around to see what looked like a small bar to his duh. And inside was the team that had won the first test with his. Anko was smiling at him. His advice, she supposed, had struck a chord. Next to her were the other 2 guys from her team. Their faces were more confused but friendly. Are you hungry? Bara asked and shouted with that infectious smile. Naruto couldn't help but smile slightly as he entered Ishirakuruman's stall. Naruto watched the man's unwavering smile before the smiling purple head sat him down on a stool his size. "Aren't we supposed to be enemies?" Naruto asked the team politely. However, the three of them looked at him confused. "The guy with the nose patch." Katezu replied. "Just because we're going to fight in a month doesn't mean we have to be hostile." The other two nodded at the boy. "We are from the same village, there is no need to compete." Naruto nodded to himself. Now that he thought about it, it seemed silly to him. Naruto looked a little embarrassed, scratched the back of his head, and apologized. "And what are you going to eat?" Naruto turned around and saw the man behind the counter, washing a bowl of ramen with a slight smile. Naruto was a little surprised because he never ate out. He felt an arm around him and pulling him in. "He'll have a miso, Ojizen," he said with a Naruto-esque smile. Naruto looked surprised at the girl twice his age, but nodded his head. The man smiled and shouted back to Iyami. "A ramen of miso." And acute, there is a young woman with brown hair, about 8 or 9 years old, came out from the back. He just had his head over the pot while he was making his ramen. "How about this place?" Naruto asked. The team smiled, and everyone raised their thumbs. He turned to Anko, who was still hugging Naruto with one arm. "Although Dango is much better." Izumo remembered Naruto after Tetsu put down his bowl with a metallic clang. "Don't mind him, he thinks Dango is better than air. If I could, I would breathe Dango." Anko turned to him and said, "Who wouldn't?" He turned to the blonde next to him. "You would, wouldn't you?" Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "I've never tried it before." The Uzumaki felt Anko's gaze and it made him nervous. She got up and opened her arms in surprise. "What do you mean you've never tried Dango?" Naruto tried to get defensive. "I only order instant ramen because I never get around to trying new things." Anko, however, sat down and replied in an uncompromising tone. "Then you and I will go to take Dango at 6 p.m. Meet me in front of the Okage Tower." Izumo and Katezu looked at each other and then at her. "This is new." Naruto replied, "Okay." The conversation lightened up as the team worked on eating their ramen, and Naruto remained sitting waiting for his meal. "So, how long have you been a genin?" Naruto asked, refusing to be silent while waiting for something. They smiled and held up 2 fingers. 2 years. Naruto smiled and replied with 3 fingers. 3 months. The team looked at him in surprise before Izumo smiled and said, "Heh, don't you feel like moving up the ranks?" Naruto looked at him confused. "You should take some time to relax in your range. If we had wanted to become Chunin earlier, we could have done it. But we have no pressure on any mission. The worst thing that can happen is that we don't find a cat." Naruto laughed covertly. "When you get to Chunin, you should do C-rank quests for a while and relax. Instead of making a rank, go and let people die." Izumo finished his monologue, but his tone dropped at the end of the sentence. "When I finished, it looks like I finished eating there." "Here you go, Daddy," she said to the head chef, and handed him the ramen. She turned to Naruto and smiled, and he smiled back. The old man took it and placed it in front of the blonde. The smell of ramen had been getting to Naruto's nose since he was a block away, and he finally tasted some of the prized food. Naruto took one of the chopsticks from the small glass in front of him and took some of the noodles. He put it in his mouth and began to absorb the noodles. The ramen was absolutely delicious. Her eyes filled with hearts as she discovered a new kind of love. His mouth began to absorb the rest of the ramen, until almost all of the contents disappeared except for the broth. Naruto was eager to grab the bowl and drink it. Naruto set the empty bowl down on the counter with a sigh of satisfaction. He pulled it aside and said to the old man, "If it's okay with you, I'm looking forward to trying a tango." "I'm gonna need another one, sir." The man smiled and asked his youngest daughter to prepare another one. Naruto waited patiently for his next ramen, while his new friends laughed at his change of tastes. Naruto will definitely come more often. Naruto devoured several bowls of ramen, offering entertainment to his guests as the bowls piled up more and more. The Ichirakus watched in amazement. Aim was finally not hidden by the high counter, as Naruto and the team could see some small hands handing his father a steaming bowl of ramen. Naruto stopped and seemed to take a deep breath and exhale it. A drop of sweat lit up everyone. If they didn't know, they would have thought I was holding my breath. "And what's life like in your group of misfits?" Katezu asked. Naruto paused for a moment and thought. "We've been together since I started at the academy," Naruto said. "And we are lucky that they have put us together in a team." "We hated," Anko added, seemingly at random, between sips of ramen. Katezu and Izumo laughed. "We couldn't stand each other. Our sensei used to have to stop us from fighting constantly," Anko said, pausing. "But after a bad mission, he brought us together." Naruto thought for a moment. "Where is your sensei now?" "Dead," Izumo said. Naruto noticed that everyone was looking at their bowls with a more solemn expression. "Our sensei noticed how close we are," he continued. Everyone was silent for a moment, but gradually only one. A smile was drawn on all of them, and Naruto felt the situation perk up a bit. "Even though we miss her, we will never forget her or how she helped us," Katezu said. "I can't thank him enough." Anko and Izumo nodded. Naruto was silent and asked who she was. Anko got up and stood firmly in front of him. For a moment, Naruto thought he was going to hit him. "It was Kudo to Yain, don't forget that," she said with a confident smile as she pointed at him. The truth is that the reason he was able to smile so quickly in front of Naruto when they met at the Chunin exams was because her sensei always told her to smile more. And Naruto managed to get him to remember not to repress him like with Orochimaru. She was the best stamp teacher in the Land of Fire. Forget about Jiraiya, the Sannin, or the fourth Hokage. The fourth Hokage learned seals mainly from her. Anko bragged about his sensei. Izumo jumped next to her and adopted a stance that only she could match in feeling. He also had tears in his eyes, but Naruto could see that they were tears of pride. She was also the most beautiful kunoichi in the world. Naruto's young mind tried to paint the image of a woman who instructed the fourth Hokage. The painting showed a strong woman in Viking armor in front of a kneeling version of her father, who didn't look so epic in his white coat on the floor. Naruto wanted to know more about the goddess he was talking about. "What did he look like?" Anko asked, who pulled out a framed photo from who knows where. He handed it to Naruto, and Naruto saw the famous Ion. He was definitely not wearing a Viking armor, but a luxurious yukata with a fan wrapped around his waist. She had platinum blonde hair and was the only smiling face in the photo. To his left, he was holding something that looked light, but Naruto had the feeling that it was like trying to escape from a crushed mountain. Anko, to his right, had a furious look. On the left, a young Kateksu, held by nothing, seemed to struggle. And finally, in his right hand, held with that imposing but gentle force, was Izumo, with an angry face and looking to his left. Naruto looked up and handed it back to Anko. "She is very pretty," he said with a faint smile. Katetsu pointed to the image. "I'm trapped because he sealed me to his leg so I wouldn't move. It is one of his most precious stamps. It can make something move to something else and stay there." Naruto opened his eyes wide to the possibility of a seal capable of doing that. "He never told us, but I think the Yondai took it from me and created the legendary T-Irasen technique." Naruto opened his eyes even wider as he remembered a black and yellow scroll labeled Irasen. He thought it was another acceptable jutsu. Anko nodded. "Yes, if it wasn't for Ayane-sensei, we would have never won the war between Kono and Iwa." And the two boys nodded. Naruto's mind got distracted to do some math. His father plus Konoha equals a war won, so his father equals Konoha. So if Iwa hates Konoha, then Iwa hates her father. And if his father is the same as himself, then Iwa hates him. Needless to say, Naruto will try to stay away from the Earth Country. "What is the Irasen?" Naruto asked. Everyone in the grandstand turned to look at him as if a second head had popped out. "What is the Irasen? How did you pass the academy?" Anko asked the boy, looking at him in amazement. Naruto got nervous, but tried to reply quickly, "Hey. I didn't have to go through those classes. I skipped them and stayed on how to use chakra and strategies, sorry." No one really knows how to use it because the Yondaime didn't want those who misused it to learn it. So he never told anyone about it. The technique teleports him to a cradle and with engraved seals. The only thing the enemy would see would be a yellow flash, hence the name," said the chef, while cleaning some of Naruto's used bowls. The ninja stared at the man like a fish out of water. "Hey, how do you know all that, Ichiraku-san?" Naruto asked. The old man smiled and answered proudly. "I have been holding this position since the reign of the second Hokage. You usually buy these things from customers," the man said, surprisingly older, nodded. "Dad is an old man, he can't even play tag with me without breaking his calera," said the girl behind the counter with a pout that the ninja could see because she was sitting on a stool behind the counter. All the ninjas sitting at the counter laughed hysterically. Anko was pounding the table trying to contain the pain in his abs from the constant laughter. The old man directed an angry glance at the genin, but he was not achieving his goal with flushed cheeks. "That happened once," he muttered to himself. The genin's laughter died down, and they stopped with a smile. Naruto got up and stretched. "I have to get back to training. I still have to beat the crap out of you in the exams," Naruto said with a smile. However, his smile faded when Anko kicked him in the stomach. Naruto was thrown 10 meters back, and stopped as he fell to the ground. But the blonde was enveloped in white smoke, revealing a stool. Anko turned around without surprise, and saw Naruto standing next to a taller Iyami. "Goodbye." And he ran out at full speed. "I like it," Anko said with a smile. "It's okay," the other two said after looking at Anko for a moment. They sipped more noodles before anyone looked at them. Seeing this, Toiki and Kirakulos watched with a malicious gaze. "Since he's gone, I guess you pay the bill." They turned to see the sink practically full of clean bowls, which is not a difficult task considering that it is half a meter deep. Elsewhere, Naruto was visibly shaking for no apparent reason. He looked around, but did not feel any gaze on him. But that feeling was coming from somewhere. Naruto returned to the training ground that he and Itachi were using an hour ago. Itachi was there holding a balloon. Naruto was grateful to see the balloon moving around instead of Itachi having a moment, no, a period of time. Itachi noticed it, but returned to his balloon. Naruto just smiled. "Hey, Itachi-sensei," he said as if he had just arrived from work. He approached the open scroll and began to open it more and more, revealing the second step. Naruto read the excellent explanation of the first step and how he completed it in spades, taking advantage of the time it took him. Until late at night. He looked at Itachi-sensei, who was still trying to master the first step in silence. "I would need rubber balls to strengthen the chakra." He turned around and saw another bag next to the one with water balloons. Out of curiosity, he opened it further to see inside, and revealed rubber balls held. Naruto looked at Itachi again. "If I saw him doing the jutsu, I would know how to do it." Naruto pulled one out and started holding it when Naruto heard a buzzing sound and saw a crib and cut down a tree, closer to Itachi than Naruto, and stopped. There was a little note stuck on it. Naruto jumped away from the explosive tag and ran to hide behind a forgotten tree ball. He stopped behind the tree, without explosion, and looked at the Kuna and from his hiding place to see Hitachi reading the note. Naruto ran to meet him. "What is it, Itachi-sensei?" "A mission," he said. Itachi turned to Naruto. "I have to go, I will wait for an improvement in this jutsu you are working on." Itachi waved briefly and jumped back into the village. Naruto stopped at what he saw. He noticed that there was no water balloon on the ground, which meant that Itachi had taken it. Naruto smiled, knowing that he was getting on his sensei's nerves. Naruto looked at the scroll again and held the ball in one hand. "Phew. How difficult. Anyway, the winner of the poll is Kitsune no Sennin. I already have the chapter ready, and I will publish it tomorrow. Today is Thursday in the eastern United States. I hope you will tell me how the story went, and I will finish the next chapter as soon as possible. Veentox Ninja."